Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfic guy, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Becomes Mafia Leader? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. October 31st day 06 o'clock. Aizawa is the last to arrive in the teacher's lounge. When he first walks in, he's fairly certain he's hallucinating, probably due to a lack of sleep. The other teachers are sat around a table, with the principal himself at the head, brandishing a dry erase marker. Aizawa has half a mind to turn around and walk out, but instead he blinks tiredly. What's going on? Namuri pats the chair next to her. Shoyuta. Sit. Too tired and unbothered to reply, he trudges over to the chair and plops down. Hizashi sits across from him and can diagonal. He notes the other teachers at the table: All Might, Ectoplasm, Cementos, Snipe, and Powerloader. Nizu stands on the edge of the table, clapping his paws together once Aizawa fills the final seat. Finally, Nizu says, "We can get started." Looking around, the principal's gaze lands on each of the pro-heroes. "I'm sure you're all wondering why you've been called today." "Yes," Hizashi replies, and Nizu gives a sadistic smile in return. "With the second term coming to an end, we need a way to test the students." Nizu's eyes dart from All Might to Aizawa, and he glares back. Nizu's smile grows. "I'm sure you all remember the Mafia game, correct?" "Oh no." Aizawa wishes he walked out when he had the chance. Namuri's eyes widen. "I thought that was taken off the curriculum." Which it has been. Being deemed too villainous by the Hero Commission, the Mafia game hasn't been played since Aizawa was in school. The Hero Commission argued that it encouraged villainous behavior, and so despite Nizu's wishes, Yui was forced to take the game off of their curriculum. Aizawa can see why. It's a simple concept. There's a hidden mafia within you. And it's up to the police to stop it. However, it gets a lot less simple when all the rules are thrown into the mix. It gets a lot more villainous when all the objectives are thrown into the mix. The Mafia game is a blend of questionable morals, hidden agendas, and a ton of betrayal between everyone involved. Nizu offers another maniac smile, and for the first time in a while, Aizawa feels a chill go down his spine. However, with the copious amounts of villain attacks this year, I was able to convince the commission to allow the first years to play. With strict regulations and a multitude of changes, that is. "Why exactly?" Aizawa growls, trying very strong to not slam his fists on the table and deny the game's very existence. Would the amount of villain attacks be a reason to convince the commission to allow this game? Shouldn't they have been against the idea? Nizu twirls the dry erase marker in his paws. "The first years, especially your class, have faced more dangerous villains than many heroes will in a lifetime. The commission and I believed it would be beneficial to allow students to see into the mind of a villain." Powerloader holds up a hand. "Reasons for the game's approval aside, what does this have to do with this meeting?" "Ah yes." Nizu claps his paws together. The principal turns to the blackboard, uncapping the dry erase marker and beginning to write. In black ink, he lists out 1A and 1B. He turns back to the teachers. "You need to appoint a police officer for each heroics class." Aizawa hazily remembers this part of the game. He wasn't too involved with the police when he played, but he does remember how the police work. The teachers choose a student to be the class's appointed police officer. The appointed officers fulfill the role of guessing the identities of the Mafia inner circle and Kingpin. The appointed police officer's guess reflects the entire class's suspicions, similar to how the class representative's actions speak for the class as a whole. The teachers get to appoint an officer, and the officer gets to choose a selected police officer to help them. What separates the appointed officer from the rest of the class, however, is the fact that appointed officers cannot be recruited into the Mafia. The selected officer also can't be recruited. Any other student can be recruited into the Mafia. "Let's start with Class 1A, Cementos suggests. "Do you have any candidates in mind?" Eraserhead. 1A is your class after all. The game is already in motion, and so he pushes down the urge to deny participating. Aizawa thinks about it, making a mental list of his class to rule out who should and shouldn't be the police officer. Aoyama is too extravagant and loud. Underground Heroes K missions don't suit him. Ashido is too energetic and not focused enough. Kaminari is too ditzy. Koda is too soft-spoken. Jiru isn't assertive enough. Siro doesn't possess the analysis skills needed, and neither does Tokoyami. Bakugo is too explosive to work with anyone. Mineta shares the same reasons as Jiru, and Satu just doesn't possess the traits he's looking for. Azui is a potential candidate. She's observant and clever, but so is a lot of his class. He needs to form a criteria. He's already eliminated people based on analytical abilities, so the rest will be left up to who needs a chance to prove themselves. From a teacher's perspective, who will benefit the most from this exercise? Azui would be a great candidate, maybe even the perfect one, but her classmates already know of her analytical and observation skills. Appointing her won't give her any new abilities. With that in mind, he can rule out Ida. He's already class representative, and while he would make a great officer because of how he preaches the rules, that's also why he isn't a candidate. He won't be able to see underhanded schemes. Shoji would make a wonderful officer, but Aizawa wants to leave him open to the Mafia. He doesn't think Toru has the mind for an officer, and he doesn't want to take her away from the Mafia either. That leaves his final candidates as Uraraka, Ojiro, Kirishima, Todoroki, Yaoyorozu, and Midoriya. Uraraka is smart and strong, and she could certainly benefit from a confidence boost. But he can't help but feel there's a better candidate, someone who could learn more from the game. Kirishima could also take this as a chance to prove himself, but he's a bit too focused on being manly and heroic that he could fail to see sneaky tactics. Ojiro has the same reasons as Uraraka, and he seems to be a bit too shy and sheepish. Yaoyorozu is another perfect candidate, maybe even more so than Azui because unlike the frog, Yaoyorozu has more to gain. She's clever and moral, but not too moral to let cheap tricks slip past her. She's able to work with others, she's strong enough to take down Mafia members in a fight, and she could definitely use the confidence boost of becoming a leader. Even with all those reasons, there's a couple things stopping him. She's already a recommendation student and the vice class representative, so it would be nice to give someone else the spotlight. Her vice president duties keep her hands full as well. Actually, who is he kidding? He just doesn't want to take her away from the Mafia. Because even with all those amazing qualities, he believes she'd benefit more from being a Mafia member than a police officer. Midoriya is another obvious choice. He's a triple threat, possessing astounding physical strength, a powerful quirk, and a brilliant mind. He's seen glimpses of what his analysis can do, and a challenge might be just what Midoriya needs. But Midoriya is a bit too heroic, a bit too moral, and shady things the Mafia does could slink past him. Plus, he wants Midoriya to focus on training his quirk, and the kid has been through enough already. Having him chase down another Mafia seems excessive. And that leaves only one more candidate. Todoroki has established himself as one of the heroics course's powerhouses, and while a strong quirk and excellent control over it make up for his faults, he lacks the social skills to cooperate with others. But Todoroki is analytical, Todoroki is powerful, and this exercise could give Todoroki the cooperation skills he needs. If he can learn from this exercise, he can go from a gun to a double-edged sword. Plus, Endeavor was on the villain team, and he knows Todoroki will jump at the chance to differ from his father. I'll appoint Todoroki, Aizawa says, leaning so he hits the back of the chair. Todoroki is already strong though, Nemuri argues. He's already in the spotlight, but he lacks cooperation. He needs to learn to work with others, and as a police officer, he'll be forced into doing just that. Plus, I can't envision him in the Mafia. Any objections? Nizu asks. Aizawa hears Nemuri grumble about him being an obvious choice, but no one speaks up, so Nizu exclaims, "Wonderful," and turns to write his name on the board. What about 1B? I think Kendo would be a good fit, Ken says. She'd fit the role of an officer well, and she could benefit from trying to dissect an underground organization. Objections? The teachers stay silent, and Nizu writes Kendo's name underneath Todoroki's. He caps the marker and turns back to the staff with a smile. Great, I have one more thing to discuss. Nizu hops down from the table and into a chair. The way the game works has changed since you played. It's easier for the Mafia to win, which puts the winning criteria on par with the police. I'll be handing all of you a rulebook for both the Kingpin and the police. What I want to discuss right now is your role in all of this. Teachers couldn't help when we played Snipe Notes. Is it still the same? Kind of. You aren't allowed to help the Mafia, but you aren't allowed to go after the Mafia either. It would be plain unfair to have not only hero students, but pro-heroes fighting the Mafia as well. That's reasonable, Namuri comments. Nizu's eyes glint with something dark. I want to propose a challenge. Similar to how the police guess the identity of the Kingpin, you will as well. The guessing system to the game seems unnecessary to Aizawa. All it did was make it easier for the police to win. There's an assembly at the beginning and end of the game. At the end, any remaining Mafia members are revealed. Before the assembly, the police submit their guesses as to the identity of the inner circle. If they can correctly identify the entire inner circle, regardless of the other criteria, the police win. Your guesses won't impact the scores, because that would again be unfair. I wanted to give you a challenge as well. Is the guessing system still the same? Power Loader asks, and Nizu shakes his head. Oh. It's been altered slightly. The Kingpin gets guessed separately from the rest of the inner circle. I wanted to add this rule because it seems unfair for the Mafia to be eligible to win, but then the police has 5 chances to guess the Kingpin. Aizawa nods. That makes a lot of sense. If the Mafia manages to pull off making it through to the end, a month's worth of work shouldn't be thrown away because the police have a lucky guess. Nizu claps his paws and beams. I believe that concludes this meeting. Inform your classes that there will be an assembly. The game starts tomorrow. When Aizawa shuffles out of the lounge, he can't help but feel like the adjusted rules won't be the only different thing about this year's round. October 31st day 07 o'clock. Nizu has missed the Mafia game. Every time it is played, it's just as exciting as when it was first added to the curriculum. It's one of Nizu's favorite ideas. It's a masterful blend of strategic moves, outplaying the enemy, and bending morals, as well as dissecting loopholes, combat training, and cooperating with others. The game has never gotten so immoral. Nizu had to step in, and so he was extremely disappointed when the Hero Commission struck it down, and rightfully so. Sure, the objectives could be viewed as villainous, but it had never gotten to that point, and so Nizu was understandably disappointed with it gone. It was thrilling to piece together the Mafia's plans before they were enacted, even if most of them were predictable and boring. It was rare that either side played the long game. In fact, the longest the game ever went on for was 2 weeks, only half of the full time. Nizu has never gotten to do a proper reveal assembly, which is why he knows how the game is played boils down to his choice. Since Nizu is the principal, he's on a completely neutral ground, being one of the 2 staff members able to help the Mafia. The other one is Recovery Girl, as her being an enemy of the Mafia is stripping them of a healer, and he must put his students' safety first. Nizu and Recovery Girl both don't get guesses. Other staff members, like Lunch Rush, don't get guesses either, but they also aren't exactly playing. Which brings him back to the topic at hand, players. Who did he want playing the Kingpin? He has a lot of students to choose from and about an hour to sort through them, so it's high time he makes a decision. The Kingpin needs to be analytical and clever, strategic enough to outsmart the police. They must also be someone others can rely on and trust, a natural-born leader, capable of rallying 15 people behind them. Another big problem is being morally ambiguous. The Kingpin needs to be willing to play the part of a villain. If they don't have the drive to complete the objectives, they won't get very far, and the first years are the most promising group he's seen play the game. Nizu must choose wisely. Ultimately, even though Nizu selects the Kingpin, it's the Kingpin's choice. He won't force a child to play the role of a villain if they don't want to. Besides being a good fit character-wise, they also need to be a good fit from a teaching standpoint. At the end of the day, the Mafia game is a lesson, and the Kingpin needs to be able to gain something from it, whether that's a new skill set, or a boost in confidence, or seeing villains in a different light. He's got 4 courses to choose a Kingpin from, so Nizu knocks out candidates in a speed run. He doesn't want to choose anyone in support or general education. No one in support stands out as a good Kingpin to him, and general education students have a vendetta against heroics and won't be able to cooperate. While business students would be suited to this game well, he'd like to take this opportunity to let others play the strategic game. There's two heroics classes, 1B and 1A. Running through 1B, a couple students stand out to him. Kendo would have been a great choice had she not been a police officer. Setsuna could benefit from a chance to make plans, but at the same time, her plans often fall apart when they don't work exactly like they do on paper. While that could be a skill she would gain, he thinks there are better candidates. Yanagi holds a quiet intelligence, a bit similar to Azui, but he's not sure if she'd be able to cooperate with others. Tsunatori would be a perfect analytical match, and her innocent appearance would throw off suspicion. However, he's not sure she would be willing to play a villain. Hananuki shows promise, and Nizu notes him for later, should he not find a more suited candidate. Moving on to 1A, in terms of analytical abilities, Azui and Yaoyorozu immediately stand out. He can envision both of them as Mafia members, but there are some concerns. Azui doesn't seem like the leader type, and Yaoyorozu doesn't seem like the confident type. He doesn't think either of them would be able to pull off the elaborate plans needed to play the long game. If Uraraka and Kirishima weren't so insistent on playing heroes, he would consider them. They're both all-rounders, sufficiently skilled in combat, quick thinking, and leadership. They're on his radar, but he thinks Hananuki suits the role more than them. There aren't many other options. Ida is too much of a stickler for the rules to play a villain, Bakugu is too unhinged, Ojiro has potential, but once again he thinks Hananuki would be a better fit. Shoji has potential, and Nizu considers him against Hananuki. Tokoyami, while used to the shadows, doesn't have the right personality, Jairu isn't who he's looking for, and Koda and Midoriya are too innocent. Wait. He saw the footage of the sports festival. He saw security footage of the USJ. He saw the students during the quirk apprehension test. And Nizu realizes he's been neglecting a student's potential. It was Midoriya who took down a villain robot without a quirk, hanging on to a piece of metal. It was Midoriya who then used that metal to detonate mines to get ahead. Not only did he think about the long game, but he proved he's not afraid to play dangerous to win, and he did it all without revealing his quirk. It was Midoriya who employed Uraraka and Hatsum. It was Midoriya who added Tokoyami to balance their team. He showed a clear ability to form a well-rounded lineup, as well as being open-minded enough to branch to other departments. It was Midoriya who figured out the league didn't know their quirks. It was Midoriya who came up with the plan to get Azui and Mineta out of the flood zone. It was Midoriya who moved to attack Shigaraki and Kurojari. It was Midoriya who threw the ball while minimizing the damage done to himself. It was Midoriya who decimated the zero-pointer. It was Midoriya helped take down the Shai Hasaikai. It was Midoriya who predicted Tagada's attacks. Midoriya is analytical and clever and strategic enough to outsmart the police. Midoriya is someone others can rely on and trust, a natural-born leader, capable of rallying 15 people behind him. And Nizu knows exactly what Midoriya can gain from the game. Midoriya is moral and heroic, but the world isn't black and white, and the sooner he realizes that, the better. If Midoriya can find the drive and willingness to play the villain well, Nizu is sorry for the police. They won't know what hit them until the Kingpin is unmasked. October 31st day 0830 Izuku isn't late walking into homeroom, but he isn't early either. He arrives at the door with about 5 minutes to spare, skidding to a stop before he enters. The familiar hum of chatter fills his ears as soon as he walks in. Mina, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Siro are playing some sort of card game, while Kacchan watches and yells at them from the sidelines, an angry expression with no actual bite to it plastered on his face. The sight makes Midoriya smile as he takes in the rest of the room. His classmates are all talking, no one left out from a conversation. Since Kacchan's group of friends seem to be borrowing his desk, Izuku heads over to where his friends are conversing around Uraraka's desk. Azui notices him first, greeting him and adding a "Karo" to the end. He can't hear what they're talking about, but they stop once they notice him. Izuku feels guilty for interrupting their conversation, but it's squashed down when Uraraka jumps up and embraces him. "Good morning, Deku-kun," Uraraka exclaims happily, and Izuku stutters over a reply. Gaze darting past Uraraka's shoulder, He notes Todoroki staring with a stoic gaze, Aoyama seeming to sparkle, and Ida has his hand raised in a chop. "Good morning," Midoriya Ida stiffly greets. "You should try to be more punctual. Being on time is important for a hero." Izuku laughs as Uraraka detaches herself from him, the girl pouting about how she's late most of the time. Ida launches into a lecture, and Izuku strides past, giving a greeting to Todoroki and Aoyama. "I heard there was a change in our schedule today, Karo," Azui informs. "I hope it's not another field trip. Maybe it's one of Aizawa-sensei's tests." Izuku offers. I mean he did pull us aside on the first day, perhaps," Todoroki says coolly. "I wouldn't put it past him." Aoyama jumps to his feet, appearing to glow as he exclaims, "No matter what it is, I'm sure I will shine. What about the rest of us?" Azui asks flatly, and Aoyama stutters before dramatically claiming they will shimmer as bright and dazzling as diamonds. Aizawa-sensei chooses that moment to step inside the classroom. Ida's quick shout alerts the class of his presence, and the students scramble to their seats as Aizawa heads to the podium. At his desk, Ashido is hurriedly picking up cards when she drops them, scattering them over the floor. She wails. "Damn it, I'll help," Izuku offers, and the two of them bend down to pick up the cards, Ashido giving Izuku an enthusiastic thanks. By the time Izuku has placed the cards into Ashido's hands, everyone else has sat down. Noticing the many pairs of eyes on him, Izuku blushes and silently sits in his seat, head down so his hair curls over his face. He ignores the annoyed comment Kacchan makes under his breath. Aizawa waits a couple seconds to speak, letting the class simmer in discomfort. After a moment and without changing his expression, Aizawa says, "I'm sure some of you have heard about a change to your schedule. Instead of going to first PRD, you'll be going to an assembly." The class erupts into shouts, different voices merging together. "An assembly? What's it about? I thought we were going to do something interesting. Do we not get homework from first PRD because I didn't do yesterday's?" "We had homework." Ida's voice cuts above the rest. "Quiet down, I'm sure Aizawa-sensei will explain." Aizawa's hair rises, and the class's mouths snap shut with the erasure of their quirks. "Everything will be explained at the assembly. Basically, next month will be a sort of end-term exam." "The whole month?" Kirishima asks, standing up from his seat. Aizawa glares at him. "Yes, the whole month. And before you hate me for the assignment, just know I fought against it." "What's that supposed to mean?" Mina exclaims. The bell chooses that moment to ring, and Aizawa drops his quirk, hair falling around his shoulders. "It's time to go." There's not much time for Izuku to think as he's swept up into the class's chatter. Ida and Yaoyorozu do their best to huddle the class into a line, organizing them by seat number, but with the class already splitting into their friend groups, they focus on just getting everyone to line up. Uraraka and Todoroki bound over to Izuku, the girl latching onto Izuku's arm and dragging him into line. "What do you think the assembly will be about?" she asks, standing in front of Izuku and behind Ida, having to raise her voice and lean in close to be heard over the class reps shouting. Aizawa-sensei seemed to imply the next month will be an exam," Todoroki states, standing behind Izuku and at the end of the line. "He also seems to think we'll hate him for it." Uraraka squeezes her cheeks and rocks back onto her heels. "I hope it's not too strong. The last exam was brutal." Izuku tries not to remember the sound of explosions and argument with Kacchan, along with the desperation as he saw his friend in trouble, pinned by the hero he's always loved. "Yeah, hopefully this one isn't as bad. Can it get much worse than facing off against the teachers?" Uraraka asks, frightfully looking Izuku in the eye, as if she's begging him to say no. "Don't jinx it," Todoroki replies flatly, and he grabs Izuku's shoulder, turning him in the opposite direction. The class has begun to leave without them. In sync, Uraraka and Izuku let out startled yelps, and they scramble to catch up to their classmates. Had it not been for the class's excited prattle, Izuku would have no doubt launched into a mutter spree. Aizawa had given them about 3 sentences of explanation, but there's so much to analyze within them. Apparently next month is going to be some sort of exam, similar to the one they had at the end of the first semester. However, the last exam was a complete surprise and only lasted a day. This exam will be a whole month. That seems like an awful lot of time for an exam. What could they possibly be testing? Aizawa also insinuated the exam was so awful, the class would hate him afterwards, even going as far as mentioning he fought against the exam. While Aizawa's teaching methods can sometimes be extreme, Izuku knows he's ultimately an excellent teacher with excellent judgment. If even Aizawa thinks it's a bad idea, it most likely is. Deku-kun, Uraraka shouts, shaking his shoulders. Don't go into one of your mutter storms. Sorry, Izuku stutters, the apology practically instinct. Uraraka giggles and releases him, and Izuku peers over her shoulder. The class moves slowly in a line, already having arrived at the auditorium. He can see a couple faces from 1B ahead of them, the other heroics class entering the room. He's pulled from his observations by a cool hand on his shoulder. I'm sure it will be fine, Todoroki assures, even though his tone is flat. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. Plus ultra. Yeah, Izuku says, making a fist. Plus ultra. Aizawa stands by the doorway, guiding the class into the auditorium. The lights are dimmed, but not enough to be blinded. The stage is lit up, and there's a small podium with a microphone, but no one stands behind it. Todoroki keeps a hand on Izuku's shoulder, leading Izuku to a set of stairs. They pass 2 rows filled by Class 1B, and Izuku ignores the taunts Monoma throws their way, only ceasing when Kendo reprimands him. They're led up to where their class sits, and Uraraka, Izuku, and Todoroki take the last 3 seats on the top row. Looking around, the auditorium isn't actually as full as it appears to be. The 2 heroics classes take up the middle seats, with Gen Ed classes to their left, business to their right, and support below Gen Ed. Izuku catches Shinso's eye, and he waves. In return, Shinso nods. He'll take it. There are other seats above them, many of them empty. In fact, when Izuku glances around again, he makes note of how only the first years are in the auditorium, as if seeing the other courses wasn't enough of a surprise. Along the wall, the teachers have chairs set up, spread far apart. Aizawa's chair isn't near them, but he's close enough to shout too. The chatter dies down with the help of the class representatives and the arrival of someone on the stage. Unconsciously, Uraraka grabs Izuku's forearm, and that's when Izuku realizes they're looking down at the principal. Principal Nizu walks to the podium, which explains the short size of it. He taps the microphone a couple times to get everyone's attention. Then he spreads his arms wide. Welcome, first years, to the start of the Mafia game. The what? Uraraka whisper yells, eyes wide in shock. Mafia game. What the heck was that supposed to mean? Before the chatter can start up again, Nizu continues. I'm sure you're all wondering what I mean. The full explanation will take a while, so please refrain from interrupting. Nizu lets them quiet down for a second. For the next month, you all are going to be playing what is known as the Mafia game. Think of it as your final exam. You've probably never heard of this before. You couldn't have heard of it from older students because they didn't play it. Nizu's gaze seems to linger on all of them. We have revamped this game just for you to play. I hope you have fun with it. The way he says that makes a shiver go down Izuku's spine, and he has a feeling the game won't be fun at all. If you've ever played Mafia, as in the actual game, you'll have a very vague understanding as to how this game works. In our version, one of you will be the Mafia leader, known as the Kingpin. A select few of you will be police officers. The rest of you don't have an assigned role, but you still get to help. Every other day, the Kingpin will recruit one more person into the Mafia. By the end of the month, the Kingpin should have 15 members in the Mafia, 16 including themselves. The first 4 members, recruited within the first week, are known as the Mafia's inner circle. The rest of the Mafia are known as minion members. The Mafia's goal is to complete a set of objectives and evade the police. If you are the Kingpin, you will find all the information you will need in your rulebook. As for the police, your objective is to find, take down, and unmask the Mafia. The police also must guess the identities of the inner circle and the Kingpin. The only police officers are in the heroics class, but remember, this is a year-wide exercise. Anyone here can be recruited into the Mafia, minus the appointed police. Izuku's mind swims with the information. Nizu is throwing a lot at them very quickly. Nizu smiles, as if he senses everyone's confusion. Don't worry if you're confused. Everyone will be given a rulebook, and you can ask me questions at the end. There are 4 total police officers. Before this meeting, Eraserhead and Vlad King selected their appointed police officer. The appointed police officers cannot be the kingpin, nor can they be recruited into the Mafia. They are the only people safe from the Mafia. Tomorrow, the appointed police officers will choose a selected police officer. The selected officer will be one other person from their class. Choose wisely. The selected officer cannot be recruited into the Mafia, thither. Izuku raises an eyebrow at the wording. Nizu said the appointed officers can't be in the Mafia or the kingpin, but then he said the selected officers can't be in the Mafia. But only the appointed officers are safe. The appointed and selected officers will work together to guess the identities of the inner circle and kingpin. The police will also work to find and take down the Mafia. Think of the police as your class representatives in this game. Their guesses will reflect who your class believes is the Mafia, so pool your knowledge as for the rest of you, you will either end up in the Mafia, or you'll be on the lookout for them. To make things easier for the Mafia, if you are recruited, you are not allowed to refuse. What? Someone exclaims, and Izuku shares the sentiment. It's unfair to force them to play the villain. Nizu holds up a hand. If you are recruited, you may not tell people you are in the Mafia. However, you can be as uncooperative as you'd like. Does that mean they can't tell anyone directly? Todoroki whispers, eyes glued to the stage. That means if they try to recruit you, drop as many hints as you can. There are a multitude of ways for the police to win. 1. If all 11 minion members are taken down and unmasked. 2. If 3 out of the 4 inner circle are taken down and unmasked. 3. If the kingpin is taken down and unmasked. And even if the police fails to do that, if they can successfully guess either all of the inner circle or the kingpin, the police wins. It's a lot harder for the Mafia to win. To even be eligible to win, the Mafia must complete 5 out of 10 objectives, and have at least 1 minion member, 2 inner circle members, and the kingpin still active. If even one of the inner circle members gets away unguessed, as well as the kingpin, and all those requirements are met, the Mafia wins. Kendo stands and raises a hand. Principal Nizu, has the Mafia ever won? Nizu doesn't hesitate to answer. No, they have not. The auditorium falls silent. What's the point of playing then? If the Mafia is practically set up to fail, what makes their year any different? That is no reason to give up hope, Nizu says, answering the question on everyone's minds. There is a first for everything. And the game has been modified, so this round is different from past versions. Nizu claps his paws. Any other rules will be covered in the rulebook. Remember, there's no neutral ground. You're either with the police or with the Mafia. Does anyone have questions? A girl from business shoots out of her seat. What's the teacher's role in all of this? The teachers can't help the Mafia, but they can't go after them either. They will also be guessing the kingpin and the kingpin only, but their votes won't affect the scores. Further information regarding the teachers can be found in the rulebook. Who is participating in this exam? No students in the years above you are participating, Nizu replies. Are there any teachers the Mafia can trust? Recovery Girl and I are neutral parties. If the Mafia is still at large at the end of the month, will we learn who the kingpin is? There will be another assembly like this one as soon as the game is over. Everyone in the Mafia will reveal themselves then, going in reverse order. Be sure to note your seat. You'll be sitting in the same spot in the ending assembly. Who are the police officers? I was waiting for someone to ask that. Selected officers will be chosen tomorrow during class by the appointed officers. As for the appointed officers, would Todoroki Shudo and Kendo Itsuka please stand up? Izuku glances at Todoroki as he rises out of his seat, face not betraying his thoughts. In the row below them, Kendo also stands. Nizu spreads his arms wide. Please welcome your appointed officers. Todoroki represents 1A, and Kendo represents 1B. Izuku can't help but smile at the news. He turns to Todoroki. Congratulations, Todoroki, I'm sure you'll do great. Thank you, Midoriya, Todoroki says curtly, nodding to the others in their class who call out to him. How come we don't get police? A boy from Gen Ed asks, and angered shouts rise from the other courses. Nizu holds up a paw. Once again, the Mafia has never won before, and so changes were made to make it a bit easier for them. Also, don't forget that all of you can seek out the Mafia, and the police simply submits their guesses on the final day. Since the hero students are the ones in need of deductive skills the most, they are the police. The boy from Gen Ed grumbles as he sits down. Izuku can sympathize. If he were in another department, he'd be jealous too. He cringes. All the more reason for everyone to hate them, right? I believe that's all, Nizu says. You'll find rule books on your desks when you return to your classrooms. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask your teachers or me. You are dismissed. Good luck, go beyond, and plus ultra, the students echo, with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Todoroki was right, Uraraka should not have jinxed it. It can definitely get worse than fighting their teachers. October 31st day 0930 Todoroki can say, with absolute certainty, he was not expecting to be chosen as police. Looking around at his classmates, he can pick out multiple people who would be better suited towards the role. Yaoyorozu is extremely smart, Ida is a wonderful example of upholding the law, Uraraka is a double threat with both smarts and strength, Azui is extraordinarily observant and would be a great guesser, Midoriya is the epitome of everything a hero should be, even Bakugo would be a better choice. Okay, maybe not that last one. He simply doesn't understand it. Why would the teachers choose him? And he doesn't mean that in a self-depreciating way. He knows his strengths. Which is exactly why he's confused. While his deductive skills aren't the worst, Todoroki is undeniably a powerhouse. He's better suited to physical fights, not unmasking a mafia. Todoroki is flashy and forcible, and this exercise is designed as more underground work, which Todoroki won't be doing much of when he becomes a pro hero. So his skill set must not be why he was chosen, but then what is? This is an exam. It's a test. It's an exercise. The teachers shouldn't be prioritizing who fits to the role, they should be focusing on who can gain the most from the experience. But then why him? Going back to his candidates, he can rule out a few of them. Azui wouldn't gain much because she already has deductive skills. Ida already has a multitude of leadership opportunities because he's class rep. Midoriya has already helped take down a sort of mafia, so he already has experience. That leaves Uraraka and Yaoyorozu. They both fit character-wise, and they could both gain a confidence boost. Uraraka could use the challenge of being a leader, and Yaoyorozu could use the confidence from winning. Which brings him back to the question, why him? What can he gain from this exercise? Maybe it's to improve his logical reasoning skills, but he feels there are people who need that more. Todoroki is already suited to be a leader based on power. Was it to learn to cooperate with others? A big part of the game is working with his selected officer, as well as the police from 1B, to take down the mafia. Todoroki is aware he doesn't have the greatest social skills, but that seems like a small reason to pick him above anyone else. Though he supposes being able to work with others is an important heroic skill. In that case, not only should he look for a capable selected officer, but he should also choose someone he can work well with. If he chooses someone he isn't very close to, they'll have a strong time working together. Okay, he can work with that. In that case, he'll give it his all. Todoroki refuses to let the teachers and his class down. Todoroki vows, right then and there, that he will find and he will catch the kingpin. October 31st day 01610 Class 1A has been in a buzz ever since the assembly. Izuku is surprised they managed to get through the day, much less get anything done. The rest of the day had been fairly simple, with no combat training or activities. He was half zoned out during class, thoughts swimming with different ways to help the police and determining who would be suitable to the mafia. If they have to take down and unmask the kingpin to win, they needed to work diligently during the first couple of days. The longer the game goes on, the more people the mafia recruits, and the more people they have to unmask. If they can weed out the kingpin within the first or second day, they'll end the game before it can even begin. Speaking of weeding out the kingpin, What does take down and unmask even mean? It implies that the Mafia members have to wear masks, but what does take down mean? What qualifies as taking down? Maybe Izuku can ask Todoroki. After all, Todoroki got a different rulebook to the rest of them. Everyone in their class has a white rulebook except for Todoroki, who has a blue one. Izuku deduces Todoroki got a police-specific book, and his probably details what taking down means. Either way, Izuku makes a note to himself to ask later. The final bell rang a few minutes ago, and Izuku currently walks next to Uraraka, Ida, and Azui, heading back to Heights Alliance. Izuku is snapped out of his mutter storm by Azui's voice. What do you think, Midoriya? Can you repeat the question, he asks, sheepishly rubbing the back of his neck as his face burns red. I asked who do you think the kingpin will be, Karo? Ooh. Izuku taps his chin with his finger. With Todoroki and Kendo as police, I think the kingpin will be someone more analytical and smart to balance them out. The kingpin has a lot more to juggle, so they can't be someone too straightforward. They also have to be someone trustworthy so other people work with them, but they can't be so kind they won't be able to play the villain. Okay, Uraraka waves her hands. I think she meant specific people, Deku-kun. He somehow blushes harder. Right. In that case I'm not sure. I can't think of a lot of people who would be willing to play the villain. That's what I was thinking as well, Ida comments, adding a chopping motion while he speaks. I don't see how having a hero student play the villain will be beneficial to their growth. The kingpin might not be a heroic student, Karo, Azui says. Principal Nizu said any of us first years could be in the Mafia. That includes other courses. The game probably doesn't make the kingpin do anything too villainous either, Uraraka adds. Like, at worst they have to steal or something. It's a shame we can't ask the older students, Azui remarks. It would be helpful to know what they did. Which is another thing bothering Izuku. Why didn't the older students play? Why was it only them? Nizu said the game was revamped for them, but why? And when was the last time the game was played? If it hasn't been for a while, then why was it taken off the curriculum? We've arrived, Ida declares, and Izuku looks up to see the 1A Alliance sign. Ida strides ahead of them, holding open the door. Ladies first, Uraraka giggles, latching onto Azui's arm and dragging her inside the building. Izuku follows suit and then Ida, with the class rep closing the door behind them. A few of their classmates sit in the common room, working on homework or playing on their phones. Most of the students are in their rooms completing homework like usual. Uraraka, Azui, and Ida head for the elevator. I'm gonna take the stairs, Izuku says. He usually uses the stairs because he's only on the second floor, so going by elevator would be a waste. Plus, it's good exercise. Bye, a chorus of goodbyes sound from his friends, and once the doors close, Izuku heads up to his room. His head is surprisingly empty, too out of energy to go into overdrive. He could think more about the Mafia game, or the homework, or anything really, but there's an oddly calm buzz, like his mind is in the eye of the storm. He's excited to work with the police. He's always loved to analyze quirks, and throughout the day, he had started a list of whose quirks would be beneficial to the Mafia. Once he finishes his homework, he'll write out his list and give it to Todoroki. Izuku may not be a police officer, but he'll still help any way he can after all. That's what a hero would do with newfound eagerness. Izuku bounces on his toes as he opens the door to his room. And all his plans are promptly thrown out the window. There's a sleek black book on his desk, and Izuku knows for a fact it wasn't there before. Confusion fills him first, and apprehensively, he crawls into his room, closing the door behind him. Is this a prank? Did someone sneak into his room? Did the League of Villains put this here? Wait, that would mean the League is here. He should go alert someone. Well, he should investigate first. Izuku walks over to his desk, ears out in case a villain jumps out of his closet. Carefully he picks up the book. Nothing happens. Izuku raises an eyebrow, eyes darting around his room, looking for a hidden camera to indicate this is a prank. When he turns back to the book, he realizes it's backwards, so he flips it over. Izuku almost drops it. In red lettering, the cover reads, Kingpin, the Mafia game rulebook? No. This can't be happening. He can't be a villain, he can't run a mafia, there's no way. There's no way. What did he do to deserve this? What did he do to make Nizu think he could be a villain? Izuku has always loved heroes. Boys. Since he was born. And now, said heroes are forcing him to become the very thing he hates. When Izuku cracks open the cover, a slip of paper flutters to the ground. He picks it up and reads it. Dear Midoriya Izuku, you have been chosen as the Mafia Games Kingpin, aka the leader of the Mafia. Please read through this guidebook and visit my office at 1630. I'll answer any questions you have there. Please. If you absolutely do not want to be the Kingpin, you may return this book to me. I will not force you to be the villain if you don't think you can. Good luck, Nizu. Izuku breathes a sigh of relief. He can refuse. He doesn't have to be the Kingpin. He doesn't have to be the villain. He should still flip through the rulebook, though. Even if he's going to return it, knowing what the Kingpin has to do will be a huge benefit to the police. Izuku makes his way to his desk chair, cracking open a notebook and beginning to read. Much of it is what Nizu explained at the assembly, just with more detail. Izuku writes down phrases that stand out to him, loopholes the Kingpin will be able to exploit. If they can figure out the moves Kingpin might make, the police will no doubt be able to apprehend them. Some of the wording throws Izuku off. He's on the second section, which is who can and can't be recruited, and he's already found a surprising number of loopholes. When he gets to how they can win, he finds it will be exceptionally difficult to apprehend the Mafia towards the end, unless they catch the Kingpin. The 3-out-offer inner circle rule would be practically impossible. If they aren't told who is in the inner circle, they would have about 15 people to apprehend, and they'd have to hope 3 of them are inner circle members. Izuku grew frustrated during the assembly because Nizu didn't quite explain what separates the inner circle from the minion members, other than the fact that the inner circle get guessed. The rulebook clears his confusion. The inner circle are the 4 members recruited during the first week, and they are supposed to be the members closest to the Kingpin. They are the people let in on plans, functioning as 4 right-hand men. That's why they are also guessed. However, to make it easier on the Mafia, the police have to guess all 4 inner circle members to win at the end. That makes sense. It would be unfair to have the Mafia get so far, only to set them up to fail. This further proves Izuku's hypothesis that they need to catch the Kingpin during the first couple days. It's highly unlikely they'll be able to accurately guess the 4 inner circle members and the Kingpin. Unless the inner circle explicitly says they're in the inner circle, they would have to pick 4 out of 15 Mafia members and pray they're all in the inner circle. One big difference between the Mafia and police is that the Mafia has objectives, supposedly, so the Mafia has something to do to make it a Mafia. He knows they can't be too Mafia-like. This is a hero school after all. There's 10 total objectives, and the Mafia needs to complete at least 5 of them to win. Izuku flips to the next page, and the 10 objectives are listed out. And holy SHD, Izuku isn't one to curse, but he thinks this warrants it. Now he can see why the game was taken off the curriculum. This isn't borderline questionable. This isn't a bit out there. This is downright villainous. How did the Hero Commission allow this? This is the kind of stuff that turns people into villains. How is Nizu allowing this? How is Nizu allowing him to do this? What made Nizu even think he could do this? Morally, this is so wrong. Izuku can't imagine how the Kingpin will feel when they get this book. He can't imagine how the Kingpin will feel playing the game, and yet before he realizes what he's doing, his mind is flying a mile a minute, highlighting specific loopholes, creating plans, outlining exactly who and what are needed to complete certain objectives. Some of them are a lot easier than the others, some of them aren't nearly as villainous. If he really wanted to, he could do this. And well, he doesn't want anyone else to play the villain. He doesn't want anyone else to have this on their conscience. Sure, it would be wrong to play this game, but wouldn't it be more wrong to pass the responsibility to someone else? Izuku logically, he could do it. In theory, he could pull this off. He could avoid the worst objectives and pick the lesser of 10 evils. If Izuku does it, at least no one else has to. No one else will have to lie to their friends. No one else will have to bend their morals. No one else will have to feel the exhilaration that comes with this kind of power. And Izuku makes a decision. He'll play Nizu's game. But he won't play against his friends. He won't pummel Todoroki into the ground. He won't snap Kendo in half. He won't hurt his classmates. He won't fight his friends. If Izuku plays as Kingpin, he won't play against the police. Izuku will play against his morals. Izuku will play as Kingpin so no one else has to. And if he quietly admits that there's a part of him that maybe, just maybe, loves the challenge and loves the chance to prove himself, and wants to play as Kingpin, no one will have to know. October 31st, day 01630. Izuku, take a seat. In typical Nizu fashion, the door is opened before Izuku can step into the room. That means Nizu must have a camera system, possibly an alert system. He wouldn't be surprised if Nizu was able to program his computer to notify him when someone was outside his office. Does that mean he has motion sensors too? You appear to be lost in thought, Nizu says, retreating back to his desk. Sure, Izuku says, and Nizu turns around to prepare him a cup. Izuku slips a hand into his pocket and pulls out a pen as he takes a seat, laying the Kingpin rulebook, as well as his own notebook, on the table. Nizu hands him a teacup, and he accepts it and thanks him. Now, Nizu takes a sip from his own cup. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, yes? Why me? Izuku blurts, and he has to actively restrain himself from rubbing the back of his neck. Nizu doesn't miss the twitch of his hands. Not that I don't think I'm capable, I just want to know why. Nizu takes a moment to both drink his tea and let them sit in silence. The principal sets his teacup on the table. Why wouldn't I choose you? I believe out of all the heroic students, you have the most potential to win. Izuku ponders on that. Nizu seems to love specific wording. He said out of all the heroic students, which means Izuku isn't necessarily the best candidate out of everyone. If he has to guess, he would say business course students would be suited to the role of Kingpin as well, and choosing Izuku was both because the business course already does similar exercises, and more chaos will be stirred up with the identity reveal. I see, Izuku mumbles, setting aside his own teacup in favor of his notebook and pen. Do you mind if I ask some questions? Of course not, Nizu replies, and Izuku launches in. Who can I recruit? You cannot recruit any second or third years. However, any of the first years are fair game, no matter the course. You also can't recruit police officers. What exactly does take down and unmasked mean? I assume you'll be wearing a mask to hide your identity. In that case, it means to either pin or render the member unconscious and take off their mask. Do I have to wear a mask? It's not required, but the police would easily be able to identify you without one. How many people will I recruit per week? It varies per week. You recruit someone new every other day, which means week 1 gets 4 people, week 2 gets 4 people, week 3 gets 3 people, and week 4 gets 4 people. Am I allowed to recruit multiple people per day? No. It's 1 new member every other day. What if I fail to recruit someone? You automatically lose. Does the game end on the 30th or the first day of December? The final day is the 30th. The ending assembly is the 1st of December. What's the point of having the teachers guess our identities if their guesses don't affect the score? Nizu picks up his teacup and takes another sip. It's more of a challenge for the teachers than anything else. Though, if you can manage to throw off the teachers as well as the police, you'll certainly be rewarded. You said at the assembly that you're either on the side of the police or the Mafia. Should someone discover my identity, am I allowed to bribe them into not telling the police? Nizu smiles. The rules don't say you can't. Are the teachers allowed to help me? No, they cannot help Mafia members. Well, they can't help you with anything related to the Mafia. If you have a problem outside of that, then of course they can help you. Can the teachers help the police? They can't help take you down. Allowing pro heroes to charge after you, along with hero students, would be unfair. You said you and Recovery Girl are neutral parties. What does that mean? Since I'm hosting the game, I can help both sides with the rules, but I cannot help either side in matters that directly interfere with the game. Recovery Girl is neutral because we can't strip either side of a healer. Is there a line I can't cross? If things get too villainous, I'll stop the game. What's deemed too villainous? You'll know if it happens. How do you always open the door right before I walk in? Cameras? Is Objective 10 hidden within Yui? Perhaps. How can you drink so much tea? Willpower? Is Objective 8 the reason the Hero Commission struck down the game? Nizu leans back, setting his teacup on his lap. There were a multitude of reasons for the game being removed. The Hero Commission believed it encouraged villainous behavior. I mean, that's kinda the whole point, Izuku points out, only half joking. Nizu chuckles. True. That's why Objective 8 has specific guidelines. Izuku nods. Then what weapons am I allowed to use? The back of the rulebook states what's allowed and what's not. You aren't allowed to pull a knife on a student. Guns are allowed, so long as they are paint guns. Izuku hums. I'm not sure what else to ask. You can always come back later if you have any more questions, Nizu says. I'll be speaking to Todoroki and Kendo after this, so come by again tomorrow. Are they going to see me leave? No, they'll be arriving in about, Nizu checks the clock, half an hour. I should get going then. Izuku stands, collecting the rulebook, notebook and pen. He bows politely. Thank you for the tea. You're welcome, Nizu says with a smile. I'm looking forward to seeing your moves. Izuku smiles, giving a final goodbye, and he turns to leave the office. Nizu doesn't have to look forward to his performance. It's day 0, and Izuku has already executed his opening move. November 1st day 1630 Ida Tenya is a stickler for the rules, and he is very proud of that fact. It's his duty to be a respectful hero, and as such, it's his responsibility to care for his classmates. He was selected to represent them all, a show of trust from his classmates, therefore he will set an example for his peers to follow. He promises to uphold the rules and the honor that comes with them. Which is why the Mafia game rubs him the wrong way. It's not that he's questioning Yui's judgment, it's the most prestigious school for a reason. But in his opinion, this exercise is only damaging their future careers as heroes. From his perspective, it seems like it will only encourage villainous acts, and that's the last thing they want. Why make a future hero impersonate a villain? Why make a future hero enact villainous behavior? Why make future heroes lie to their friends? Ida has a sinking suspicion friendships will never feel the same after this. They're training to become pro-heroes in the future. Ida simply doesn't see how playing the villain will benefit them. To be fair, he doesn't know exactly what the Mafia does, not being in it himself, so perhaps it does teach them something other than the harsh reality that comes with suspecting all their friends. Clearly the Mafia game must further their careers in some way, right? Perhaps it's like the heroes versus villains games they've done before, only on a much larger scale. In that case, the Mafia is being used to teach the heroes how to identify underground networks. The exercise will also teach them to distinguish lies from people they trust. Certainly, if they can't notice cues from their friends, they won't be able to from a villain. That must be it. In that case, Ida feels bad for the Mafia. It's a shame they're being used to better the hero side, but it's necessary to their development. Perhaps the Mafia will get something out of this as well. What that something is, he doesn't know, nor is he sure he wants to find out. Ida decides to be excited for the game. He lives and breathes rules and order, which will make it easy for him to find those who disrupted Ida, without a doubt, believes they can catch the Kingpin, and as a hero in training he will be sure to help in any way he can. November 1st day 7 o'clock Izuku knows that if he wants to get started, he needs to get started early. Most of his class are early risers, him included, so seeing him awake and eating breakfast at 7 in the morning isn't out of the ordinary. Satu is in the kitchen, making some sort of meal. Izuku isn't sure what it is, but it looks and smells delicious, plus it's Satu making it, which guarantees its good quality. Kaken has already gone out for a run, and Ida is in the common room reading a book. The rest of his classmates will be starting to awaken, and Izuku really wants to get to Yui before any of them do. Ida is his biggest problem. He's insistent on being punctual, which usually means arriving at the classroom a good half an hour before class starts. Sometimes he arrives earlier. While Izuku isn't worried about Ida seeing him enter Yui, he is worried about the class rep catching him leaving. It'll be difficult to time, but it's possible. Excited? Satu asks, sitting down beside Izuku at the table. Izuku swallows a bite of cereal. Excited for the game? Oh. He stirs his spoon around his bowl. I guess. I don't want our classmates to have to lie to each other. Which is true, Izuku knows he'll have to recruit from his class, and the thought of being the reason they lose friendships is a lot to bear. Hopefully everyone will understand that this is ultimately a game, and they won't kick the Mafia out of their friend groups. Sata nods, dousing his homemade pancakes in sugary syrup. Me neither. I can't imagine how the Kingpin must feel, having to lie to everyone. Oh, he has no idea. It kept Izuku up at night. He'd been just about to fall asleep when he realized he'll have to deceive all of his classmates, all of his friends. He'll have to look Uraraka in the eyes and tell her he's not a villain. He'll have to walk beside Ida, knowing they'll probably end up fighting. He'll have to stand beside Todoroki and act like Todoroki isn't chasing him around. Because of course Izuku has to be friends with his class's police officer. Nizu is a cunning little beach. Izuku walks over to the sink, washing out his dish and utensils, ignoring the fact that he will be straight up lying for an entire month and forcing others to do it as well. Once he dries his bowl and puts it back in the cupboard, he walks over to the door, shoes already tied to his feet. Luckily for Izuku, he has a routine of going for a morning run, so him slipping out the door isn't an uncommon sight. But Izuku doesn't start jogging along the trail. Instead, he turns and heads for you. The building isn't that far away, so he still gets a run in, but not as much as he would have liked. Oh well, he'll have to sacrifice a bit of exercise now and work harder later. Pulling out his ID, Izuku steps through the gate and walks into Yui. Noting that the only person watching him is Nizu, if the cameras are anything to go by, Izuku makes his way to his destination. It's a bit strong to find, considering he doesn't exactly visit often, but he eventually locates the room after wandering in a general direction for a few minutes. He knocks on the door, knowing the person inside is used to people throwing the door open. It takes about 2 seconds for Hatsum Mei to open the door. He puts a finger to his lips and gestures for her to step outside the classroom. She complies, yelling to Power Loader that she's going to the bathroom and shutting the door. Izuku glances around, straining his ears to listen for other people. Aizawa has been putting them through a lot of SSL awareness classes, and Izuku trusts that it's safe. Or at least, safe enough. What's up? Hatsum asks, leaning against the wall. Her posture seems casual, but her eyes scream mania. I need to talk to you, Izuku says. But not here. Do you think you can distract Power Loader for a bit? Make an explosion in another room or something? Hatsum perks up, interested. An explosion? I can do that, but, she tilts her head, why can't we just talk here? If you need support gear, you can just ask. Izuku shakes his head. You'll find out if you can make the explosion. Hatsum shrugs, and she pulls a detonator from her pocket, as if she's prepared for this exact situation. When she pushes the button, he hears a bang come from the support testing lab. Hatsum bounces on her toes. Done, we should hide, though. She grabs his arm and dashes to the end of the hallway, practically throwing Izuku around the corner. She's just in time too, as Power Loader stumbles out of the lab a second later, mumbling about problem children as he heads to the ruckus. Hatsum flashes him a crazed grin, and she once again grabs his arm, this time running to the lab. Izuku learns from last time and sprints to keep up with her. Hatsum throws open the door, pushing Izuku inside. She then calmly walks in and quietly closes the door behind them. And then she immediately pounces on him. So, what is it you need? Why can't Power Loader know? Do I get to make more babies? Izuku waves his hands. Slow down, Hatsum clamps her mouth shut, but by the growing smile and barely restrained energy, he can tell her patience won't last long. To be honest, he has no idea how to go about this. It's not like he can just blurt out, I'm the Kingpin and you're in the Mafia now, congrats. No, he needs to play his cards right. He needs a logical argument, one that gives Hatsum a reason to join him, showing her the benefits he can profit. I'm recruiting you into the Mafia. Apparently he can just blurt it out. His shoulders sag as he noticeably deflates. I thought that was going to be a lot harder. Nah, Hatsum says, waving a hand. This'll be fun, we'll get to make a bunch of babies together. Izuku tries, and fails, to not blush at her wording. Okay, to have a bunch of small ideas, but I need to work on making them bigger. Think you can help? What do you have in mind? When Izuku shares his plans, Hatsum grins, teeth showing and a wild look in her eyes, and Izuku knows he's made the right choice. And just like that, the first member of the Mafia is recruited. November 1st day 1840. The air in 1A is tense when Todoroki steps through the door. It's a stark contrast to yesterday. A few people are mingling and chatting quietly, but he sees the way everyone stiffly side-eyes each other. Right now, anyone but Kendo and him are suspects, and they need to act fast. The sooner they catch the kingpin, the better. When reviewing the rulebook, Todoroki realized that by the end of week 2, catching the Mafia will be a lot tougher. Sure, identifying a member or two might be easier with more people to suspect, but it'll be challenging to end the game. The best course of action is to catch the kingpin before they can recruit more than 2 members. Though, he supposes he doesn't know how fast the kingpin will act. The first member gets recruited today, but he has no clue if the kingpin has already made a move, so Todoroki needs to remain vigilant. Uraraka and Midoriya are late, per usual, so Todoroki heads over to Ida. The class rep seems to be reviewing notes from yesterday, but he peeks up and sits straight when Todoroki comes into view. Todoroki, good morning, Ida says, chopping his hands in the air. I hope you're prepared to catch the kingpin, yeah? Todoroki says, leaning on an empty desk. I've read the rulebook. That's good, I read my rulebook as well, but I suppose yours has more information. Probably. Shut the F up, Bakugo yells, even though he's on the opposite side of the room and the two are conversing at a normal volume. Todoroki levels him with a glare. You're just mad because you weren't chosen as police? Shut the F up, Todoroki turns back to Ida, ignoring Bakugo's shouts in the background. He's about to end the conversation when he remembers the reason he was chosen. Sure, he's gotten a lot better at asking others for assistance, but if cooperation was the reason he was appointed, Todoroki should at least honor the teachers and work on improving. Any ideas as to how I should catch the kingpin? Only about half of our class is here, so when everyone arrives, look for people acting suspicious. What qualifies as suspicious? Anything that doesn't fit their usual character, Todoroki hums. Ida and Bakugo are probably out then. Ida doesn't seem nervous to be speaking to Todoroki, and he can't see any reason for Bakugo to be chosen as the kingpin. I'm going to wait for everyone else to arrive, Todoroki says, and Ida nods. He heads to his desk and sits down, tapping his fingers against the desk. Class starts soon, so his classmates should begin to arrive. Uraraka is the first of his friend group to show up, and she smiles and waves at Todoroki, Ida, and Azui before walking to her desk. She eyes the people around her, keeping people she doesn't know well on her radar. Midoriya enters next. His hair is slightly sweaty, which Todoroki supposes is from his morning run. His tie is still messed up, his smile is still shy, and he looks around at his classmates as he makes for his desk. Neither Midoriya nor Uraraka act out of the ordinary, except for glancing around the room, but everyone else is doing that, so it doesn't stand out. As others walk through the door, Todoroki evaluates them, but he doesn't find anything noteworthy. He'll have to find Kendo later and ask if she saw anything. The bell rings and Aizawa walks in, sleeping bag in one arm, papers in the other. The class is already quiet by the time he reaches the podium, bracing themselves for his news. Aizawa looks around with a dead gaze. Todoroki, stand up. He complies, chair scratching against the ground. Aizawa looks at him. Choose your selected officer. I don't care how you do it, just make it quick. Todoroki thought about this the other day, but not in detail. He got distracted by the rulebook and how many words are in it. Nizu really put a lot of thought into this game. He knows his selected will have to be someone he can work with, so he rules everyone not in the JDK squad out, minus Yaoyorozu. Todoroki can write off Aoyama. As nice as the blonde is, he and Todoroki don't mesh well when it comes to working together. Uraraka is definitely an option. Well, all of the remaining DK squad are options. Uraraka is an all-rounder, capable of strength, smarts, and leadership. She hasn't been acting suspiciously, she's already showing signs of suspecting their classmates, but that's where a problem comes in. Uraraka has side-eyed other people, but she hasn't looked at any of her friends. As strong as it is, she needs to keep an eye on the people she trusts. Ida knows the rules inside and out, and having the class rep on his side would be excellent. Ida can sniff out rule breakers like a dog can sniff out food. However, he's a bit too stiff, and Todoroki doubts he'll be able to catch underhanded tactics the Mafia uses. Azui and Yaoyorozu are quite similar. They're both smart, they're both strong, and both of them can execute plans. Azui won't have the weakness of doubting their classmates, but can he work well with her? Have they ever worked together before? Does he want to put Yaoyorozu on the back burner when she's been working on being a leader? And that leaves one option, and even without the process of elimination, Todoroki reasons it's the best one. For my selected officer, I'll choose Midoriya. Midoriya's head shoots up. November 1st day 1845. What the F? There's no way. There's no F way. Out of all the people Todoroki could have chosen, why did he choose Izuku? How did he choose Izuku? How did he manage to choose the one student who happens to be the kingpin? Is this even allowed? Didn't Nizu say police officers can't be recruited? Izuku literally cannot be a police officer, but what's he supposed to say? He can't just deny the position, that would give away his identity. He needs an excuse and fast wait. Wait. The appointed police officers cannot be the kingpin, nor can they be recruited into the Mafia. They are the only people safe from the Mafia. Tomorrow, the appointed police officers will choose a selected police officer. The selected officer will be one other person from their class. Choose wisely. The selected officer cannot be recruited into the Mafia, thither. Holy SHT sure, selected police officers can't be recruited into the Mafia, but Nizu never said they can't be the kingpin. That explains everything: the weird wording, the fact that only appointed officers were described as safe, how appointed officers are chosen before the game starts and selected officers aren't. Nizu was right. Todoroki needs to choose wisely. And Todoroki has chosen the wisest possible move, because he just handed Izuku his ticket to win. Izuku already had plans to gain some control over the police, but that would be later in the game. It would be impossible to gain a spy, so one of his biggest weaknesses would be not knowing what the police are planning. But now not only does he have inside knowledge, he can F with said knowledge. He can steer them away from guessing his members. He can drive suspicion away from himself, not to mention how much easier it'll be to pull off plans. Holy FSHT, Todoroki just gave him the best opportunity. And Izuku would be damned if he didn't take it. Why me? Izuku asks, twisting in his seat to look at Todoroki. Surely there's people more suited to? Todoroki holds up a hand. The selected officers needs to be someone I can work with. We've worked together and we can work together, which automatically puts you high up on my list. Secondly, you helped take down the Shai Hasaikai, so you already have experience with organizations similar to Mafias. Plus, you're very heroic and I don't want the Mafia to get their hands on you. Izuku can't help but blush at the praise. To be fair, a lot of Todoroki's reasoning makes sense. As their class's appointed officer, Todoroki needs to work at his best, which means having a capable partner who can keep up with him. They've worked together before, so it's not far off to assume they'll be a compatible combination. Plus, Todoroki is right about the Shai Hasaikai, but for the wrong reasons. Sure, it gave Izuku experience with Mafias, but that only makes him stronger as kingpin. As for the Mafia getting their hands on him, Izuku almost laughs out loud, instead beaming brightly to cover it up. In that case, I accept. The police don't stand a chance. Not when they're under the Mafia's control from the start. November 1st day 10:40. Izuku has to physically restrain himself from bursting into Nizu's office. Stopping himself from muttering or bouncing in his seat was a meticulous task, but one he doesn't think he failed. When Uraraka had seen his knee bouncing, she'd given him a cute smile, and Izuku had sheepishly looked back, letting her chalk it up to excitement to be a police officer. Ida had approached Izuku and asked him to join the so-called Deku squad for free PRD, but Izuku gave the excuse that Nizu had called him into his office to discuss the police rules. Nizu hadn't called him, but Ida didn't need to know that. Being shooed away as to not keep the principal waiting, Izuku tried very strong not to dash through the hallways, keeping a brisk speed walk that probably looked ridiculous to anyone watching. Which brings him to now, where the door swings open to reveal a cackling Nizu. Come in. Izuku lets a toothy smile show, and he closes the door behind him and then throws himself at the couch. Did you? I did. Nizu covers his mouth with a paw, clearly trying not to laugh. This has never happened before. But it's not against the rules. Izuku enthusiastically points out. No, it's not. Nizu shoots Izuku a knowing look. I'll have to call in Yanagi since you told Ida I am meeting the selected officers. Yanagi. Nizu seems to imply she's one BS selected officer, which is a fantastic choice on Kendu's part. Yanagi is quiet and observant, as well as intelligent, and it's great for Izuku because he wasn't planning on recruiting her. Not that that's an insult to her, of course. He doesn't have a fixed lineup yet, she just wasn't on his radar. Sorry, he says, rubbing the back of his neck. He does that a lot, apparently. That must be a waste of your time and I caused it. Nonsense, Nizu says, holding up a hand and flashing Izuku a smile. I have plenty of time. Now, I must give you a police rulebook. Izuku grins, and Nizu sets a blue rulebook with the words, Police, the Mafia game rulebook printed on the cover. Here's all the rules for the police, as well as how the police win. I'm sure you'll use them wisely. He can't stop the smile that spreads on his face, despite the fact that his cheeks hurt. This is going to be so much fun. Nizu chuckles. I'm looking forward to watching it. This year is already proving to be far more interesting than years past. Izuku looks up at Nizu. Speaking of which, if you don't mind me asking, which it's okay if you do, when was the game last played? Nizu leans back in his chair. It would have been when your teacher was in his second year, so about 15 years ago. That's a really long time. That certainly explains why the older students wouldn't know of the game, but then why revamp it for them? Why the first years specifically? Does it have something to do with the villain attacks? Maybe they wanted to provide a safe, indoor activity, so Yui can test the students within the walls, while also playing a game. That's almost spot on, Nizu comments, and Izuku realizes he's been mumbling aloud. He blushes and has to press his hand into his leg to not scratch his neck. The second reason was so you could see into the mind of a villain. With all these attacks, knowing how a villain thinks could make them easier to take down. Is that why I was chosen? Izuku whispers, fiddling with his sleeve. Because I'm All Might's successor, yes I know. It's because you have a heart of gold, Nizu smiles sadistically, and I wanted to see how much you'd be willing to twist it. Izuku hums and acts nonchalant to hide the shiver going down his spine, back hitting the couch. I hope my friends don't hate me too much after this. Especially Todoroki. I'm gonna have to lie to his face, I'm sure you'll manage. Nizu hops down from his desk chair, returning to a back counter and beginning to brew tea. Take a moment to review the rulebook while the tea brews. And Izuku does as he's told, skimming through the contents of the book. Much of what's in the book are things he already knows. The police win if they either catch all the minion members, catch 3 out of the 4 inner circle, or catch the kingpin. They can also win if they successfully guess either the entire inner circle or the kingpin. To combat this, he's going to have to get a mask made, which won't be a problem with Hatsum on his side. What will be a problem is if he ever faces the heroes, his quirk produces very obvious green lightning. That means he'll either have to revert back to the old way of using one for all, aka channeling it all into one part of his body and breaking all his bones, or he'll have to fight quirkless. He could stage a fake kingpin, but that means he'll have to be seen and known as the kingpin. His costume and mask will have to differ from everyone else's, and it will have to have recognizable features. That also means he'll have to interact with people, which puts either him or whoever the fake is in danger. Either that or he fights quirkless, which isn't a problem in of itself. His quirk is mainly an enhancer, so he can fight without it, he just won't pack as much of a punch. But against someone like Todoroki, or Kacchan, or Uraraka, or really anyone, that's a huge issue. Unless but no, he couldn't. Could he? You know how the Kingpin book has a bunch of can and can'ts? Nizu hums. Are they the exact same in this book? All the general things are. Anything related to the Mafia and their objectives directly isn't. So weapons are the same. Yep. Izuku finds the table of contents, then locates the page number for weapons. Flipping through the book, he hardly notices when Nizu places 2 teacups down on the table. Izuku schemes to find the section he wants, and he reads intently. Is it allowed? Can he do this plan? He's not quite sure if the wording lets it, but he doesn't want to ask Nizu either. Some of the game has to remain a surprise. It is ultimately entertainment for the rat, after all. Izuku reads the sentence. Then he reads before it. Then he reads after it. Then he rereads it. He thinks he can do it. It'll bend the rules so much they'll probably snap, and he's not even sure if it can be made, but he won't rule it out yet. It'll take out 2 objectives for sure. As he thinks more on it, the plan starts to fall into place, and Izuku realizes that should he pull this off, he'll most likely clear enough objectives to pass the game with one plan. But can he do it is the question. And he doesn't mean legally. He means, can he physically pull this off? Can he really do this to his classmates, his friends? I can tell you're lost in thought. Care to elaborate? I think I should talk to Livewire first, Izuku says, snapping the book shut. Is it okay if I leave the tea? Take it with you, Nizu says, waving him off. Then you can drink the tea, and you have an excuse to come back later. Thank you. Izuku slips the book under his armpit and gathers the teacup, bowing to the principal. The more Izuku thinks about the plan, the more he simultaneously feels more guilty and more elated. November 1st day 1:12:30, guess what? Izuku says, throwing the door to the support lab open and striding in with a grin maniacal enough to rival Shigaraki. What? Izuku walks over to her, a crazed smirk on his lips. Todoroki chose me as one as selected police officer. Hatsum almost drops her tool. Wide-eyed, she turns to Izuku, jaw practically on the floor. No way. He smiles. Yes way. Hatsum's own grin starts to appear. No way. Yes way. No wa. She's interrupted by a giggle, and they share a look before erupting into laughter, the 2 of them doubling over. Izuku clutches the table to keep from falling, and Hatsum curls into a ball on the floor, laughing so strong it sounds more like she's choking. That, I can't belie, I can't, Hatsum says, holding her stomach as she rolls on the floor. This is amazing, I know, Izuku exclaims, beaming at the pink heap on the floor. Out of all the people, he bursts into laughter again, unable to keep himself from collapsing on the ground. Hatsum snorts, and the 2 cut off all sound as they look at each other with wide eyes, and then they're rolling on the floor again, and Izuku finds that the air is stolen from his lungs and he doesn't care. He doesn't care because all he can hear is Hatsum's laughter, and his laughter, and the ground is cold, and this is the lightest he's felt in months. This is the lightest he's ever felt, actually. At some point, their giggling starts to die down, and the fact that they're sitting on the floor, Hatsum holding the table leg and Izuku pressing his hands to the ground, is so funny he nearly starts laughing again. But Hatsum sends him a happy grin, a stark contrast to her usual mad scientist look, and Izuku can't help but return it shyly. So, did you get the card? Yeah, Izuku replies, fishing Nizu's key card out of his pocket. There was a reason he needed to visit the principal, after all. He had talked to Hatsum about it earlier that day. Nizu had explicitly told Izuku he has cameras, and when Izuku looked for them, he could spot them all over the school. It's not surprising, and he doesn't feel violated or anything, but he knows that gaining access to them would change the game. Not only would they gain eyes all over the school, but they could change footage so the heroes can't use the cameras. Which is exactly why when Nizu wasn't looking, Izuku swiped the keycard Hatsum had told him to get off of Nizu's desk. According to Hatsum, who had asked Powerloader, Nizu has a keycard that both accesses the electricity unit and has the passcode for the cameras. There will probably be other security measures, but Hatsum is confident she can break past them, and is also sure Nizu will allow her to. Plus, if Nizu has motion sensors and an alert system like Izuku suspects he does, hopefully Hatsum will be able to both replicate them for their needs and manipulate them against the heroes. I'm not sure how long we have until he notices, so work quickly. I always work quickly, Hatsum says, shooting him a wink as she stands up. She offers a hand to Izuku, and he takes it, and Hatsum hauls him to his feet with surprising strength. I actually came up with an idea, Izuku says, as Hatsum starts fiddling with the card, abandoning whatever project she was working on before. Oh. Izuku sighs, leaning his elbows against the table. It'll take a lot of time and effort to pull off. I'm not sure if it's worth it either. Which objective is it for? If it goes right, it'll take out 4, maybe 5 of them. Hatsum stops tinkering for a split second, but she soon starts up again. So you're going for a perfect score then? I mean, I'll try. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off. Well, you don't have to pull off anything. If your plan takes so much time, You'll have plenty of members to help you. True. Then what's stopping you? Izuku rests his cheek on his hand, lazily dragging his finger in a pattern. I don't know whether it's going too far or not. Tell me about it, and I'll help you judge. I'm inner circle after all, this is the whole point of my job. And so Izuku spills his plans, and Hatsum almost whacks him atop the head for even thinking about that, but then she realizes she'll get to make so many babies, and she thinks better of it. The police better be glad Izuku isn't an actual villain. Though, with this plan he seems to be pretty darn close to one. November 1st day 1:13:20 Hatsum won't admit it, but she was secretly hoping the Kingpin would recruit her. She didn't know who the Kingpin was, but she hoped they knew about her. Her name had spread throughout Yui, so it was likely they would approach her at some point, whether it was then or the last day of the month. Oh, just thinking about all the babies she could make for the Mafia was exciting. There were so many options, and without the restraints of being a good citizen and not a danger to society, Hatsum could pull almost anything off. So when Izuku Midoriya showed up at her door early in the morning, long before class starts, asking to distract Powerloader so he could speak with her, Hatsum had high hopes. It was too coincidental to not be what she thought it was. Which was why she immediately produced a detonator from her pocket and blew up the testing. She'd originally prepared the explosives in the event of a villain break-in, but this worked too. She could rewire them again afterwards. Anyways, once Powerloader had left, grumbling about bathroom my butt, they were alone in the support lab, and Hatsum couldn't stop the anticipation from making her bounce in place. Whether Midoriya ended up being the Kingpin, or he was just there for gear, Hatsum would be happy regardless. Midoriya seemed to be nervous, his feet shifting back and forth, and Hatsum was about to tell him to spit it out when Midoriya plainly said, "I'm recruiting you into the Mafia." Yes, okay. Midoriya slumped, as if a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. I thought that was going to be a lot harder. Hatsum waved a hand, as if she wasn't elated that he ended up being the Kingpin. This'll be fun, we'll get to make a bunch of babies together. Midoriya went red, and Hatsum almost laughed. One of the big reasons she called her inventions babies, other than the fact that they were her children and she treated them as such, was to see the look on people's faces. Okay, to have a bunch of small ideas, but I need to work on making them bigger. Think you can help? She nearly jumped up and down. Though, what do you have in mind? They spent the rest of the time before Midoriya's class chatting. She could confidently say that when they sat at one of the tables as Hatsum tinkered and Midoriya spoke, Hatsum was not expecting any of that to come out of Midoriya's mouth. The boy seemed way too shy and way too innocent to even know what some of those things were, but despite all that, Hatsum couldn't hold back the enormous grin spreading across her face. And just like that, Livewire was born. She sent Midoriya off with her phone number and a new mission: find out how Nizu's cameras work. It's a project she'd wanted to fulfill for ages, but she never had time. However, Midoriya provided her the perfect excuse to do so. And so, when Powerloader walked back into the room, covered in soot and paint, Hatsum tried to play off the question about Nizu's cameras. Nizu's cameras? Powerloader questioned, still trying to clean the bright pink goo off of his costume. Why do you want to know? I was thinking about making some cameras, Hatsum said, currently engrossed in upgrading her power suit. I want to make small, almost invisible ones for the hero students to attach to their costumes, and Nizu's cameras are near impossible to see. Powerloader hummed. That's a good idea, actually. It would be a quick and easy way to convict villains. Okay, she got it. She was a brilliant inventor with even more brilliant ideas. Could he get to the point already? So how do they work? I think Nizu has a key card with a passcode, Powerloader responded. There's a sort of kill switch should someone hack into Yui, and Nizu's keycard accesses it. I don't know much else about them though, other than the keycard is yellow and the cameras aren't in the bathrooms or students' bedrooms. Hatsum sighed, pretending the information wasn't exactly what she needed. I'll figure something else out then. During free PRD, Hatsum unlocked her phone, shooting a text off to Midoriya. She also did some research on cameras. Just because she had tried to get information for Midoriya doesn't mean her on-the-fly idea was bad. She didn't hear back until Midoriya kicked down the door with a maniacal grin, and for a second, Hatsum thought Nizu had corrupted him. Then Midoriya told of what happened during class, and Hatsum couldn't hold back. She laughed. Somehow, the two of them ended up on the floor, Midoriya red-faced and teary, and Hatsum grabbing a table leg in an attempt to steady herself. At some point, Hatsum was aware she couldn't even hear their laughter anymore, but she didn't really care. She thought inventions were the only thing that could make her laugh for a long time. Hatsum didn't think she'd ever laughed like that. The only time she'd ever cackled was when an invention went either completely right or horribly wrong. Whatever happened with Midoriya, that was a lot more fun. Which brings her to now, where she's still half tempted to slam Midoriya's head into the table, even though it's been hours since the boy left the room. She thought his earlier plans were bad, but this is a whole new level. She likes it. The baby she'll have to make is something she's never tried before. She's never attempted to make a device designed to go against the exact thing it was made for. It'll certainly be a challenge, one she's never had before, and Hatsum's fingers itch to get to work. If there's one thing she's learning from the Mafia game, it's that patience is a virtue. And so, barely but she does, Hatsum represses the urge to start on the tech, and instead returns to her current job, hacking through Nizu's defenses. The principal is extremely clever, so once she's in, she's not sure whether she'll be kicked out or not, but it's worth a shot. At least she knows he won't be able to shut the cameras down, not while the card is in her possession. Having access to the cameras will be a huge advantage. And when she says huge, she means huge. There's so many benefits to the cameras, Hatsum can't even begin to list them off. Midoriya has impressed her multiple times throughout the day, and they're only halfway through day one, which is why she shoves the mental blueprints down into her mind and focuses on the task at hand, no matter how much she wants to be a loose cannon and do whatever she wants. The Kingpin is counting on her after all, and she'll be damned if she fails her boss. November 1st, day 1:16:30. Izuku waits until the end of the day to return to Nizu. He had finished the tea after he'd left the office and held onto the teacup until he had a chance to return it. At lunch, he needed to speak to Hatsum, so the end of the day was the next best thing. It meant ushering his friends to go without him and walking to Heights Alliance alone, but it was worth it. After all, Plan 9 has already started. To his surprise, the door doesn't open before he can knock, or even after he does. However, it's unlocked, so Izuku twists the knob and heads inside. The office is empty, but he can tell Nizu left only a few minutes ago, likely for a staff meeting or something. He has no clue what the principal does in his spare time. And with no time to waste, Izuku places both the keycard and the teacup on the principal's desk, before sprinting out the door. If it means catching up to his friends, Izuku will look weird on Nizu's cameras all he wants. November 2nd, day 2:07 o'clock. How often Izuku goes into Nizu's office is going to start getting suspicious. It's not a bad thing to ask lots of questions. Nizu made him very aware of that. But sooner or later he's going to run out of excuses to tell his friends, or they're going to start tailing him. He wouldn't be surprised. His class has an aptitude for not respecting privacy, which will make it harder to get around as Kingpin but easier to throw them off. All he has to do is spin a lie about someone sneaking around a lot and his classmates will hound them like a pack of wolves. However, if that gets turned on him, Izuku tries not to think about it. The Mafia might be scary, but his class when they smell gossip is scarier. He has a feeling he's going to be having a lot of early mornings and late nights this month. It's not like they're things he isn't used to, and it'll prepare him for hero hours later down the line. But still, if his class wasn't so nosy, this would be a heck of a lot easier, but the whole premise of the game is to be nosy, so he can't really blame them for sniffing around. Which is why Izuku shows up to Yui an hour early, just like yesterday. Unlike yesterday, however, he's not there to recruit. He has a few questions for Nizu regarding his big plan, and it'll be easier to ask the all-knowing rat than to look it up himself and possibly do something wrong. Not that he didn't research by himself, but clarifying with the principal would do his morals some good. Plus, if he has to, he can play it off to Ida, the most likely of his friends to question him, as him wanting to show up to school early and be more punctual, as well as wanting to look out for the Kingpin. He can probably play off a lot of his activities as police work, if he wants to. It's just another bonus of being an officer to add to the ever-growing list. Per Nizu fashion, the door swings open before Izuku has a chance to knock, and he's left standing in the doorway with his fist raised awkwardly. He should really stop bothering at this point. Things worked out much better when he just barged in like last time. Nizu's eyes glint with interest. Care to tell me why I found my key card next to your teacup the other day? Izuku sheepishly rubs the back of his neck, fearing for a second that Nizu is mad. But the rational part of his brain screams Nizu doesn't get angry at people being smart. We wanted to see if we could gain access to the cameras, and it was mentioned that your key card had the passcode. Nizu circles the rim of a new cup of tea. Doesn't Power Loader helping you break the rules? No, Izuku says, a little too quickly. Power Loader Sensei didn't know Livewire is in the Mafia, and she's making cameras for support gear anyways. Izuku trails off, realizing as Nizu smiles. Correct. I wasn't sure if you'd take the bait, and I'm glad you're defending your actions. Izuku doesn't need to raise an eyebrow to know that Nizu knows, and it's likely he set up the keycard and empty room. That BS sturdy, not that Izuku was suspecting any less. There's no way Nizu would know about Power Loader's involvement unless the rat had been listening in when Hatsum asked about the cameras, which would lead to Nizu predicting their plans. The principal cuts off Izuku's muttering. Now, what are you here for today? Izuku takes a seat on the couch, and Nizu hands him a cup of tea, joining him on the other side of the table. How the principal manages to have an endless supply of tea, Izuku will never know. How he drinks it all is an even bigger mystery. I wanted to ask about gun laws. If that's okay, sure, Nizu chirps, sipping his tea. What do you want to know? Izuku whips out his phone, opening his notes app. I already did a bit of research, but I was hoping you could clarify. I know the laws about using the guns themselves, but there aren't many about support companies making them. Which is true. Izuku knows quite a bit about the laws regarding the use of guns, especially in hero work. Back when he interned with Sir Night-Eye, he'd been able to get a license to use a support-made gun. He never had a chance to add one to his costume, and he knew he wanted something specific but he didn't know what. But the license comes in handy now. As for laws about making guns for heroes, there are regulations on what kind of bullets support companies can use, and that the support staff has to have a gun license themselves, and a few other minor things not really relevant to Izuku. There aren't laws about paint guns, which is why he's coming to Nizu. Is Livewire allowed to make paint guns for us? Izuku asks bluntly. Nizu slurps his tea. Livewire is Hatsum Mei, correct? Yeah. There's not much point calling Hatsum Livewire around Nizu, because the rat sees all, so there's no doubt he knew her identity the second Izuku recruited her. It's more to prepare Izuku for casually calling the girl by her codename and his future members by theirs later down the line. He can't afford to mess up and out any of his members' identities, so it's better to get used to it now. I believe she has a gun license. She brought guns with nets to the sports festival. She's clear to make guns for you. Which is what Izuku figured. He didn't really need clarification on this part of the plan, or even the other part. He could research that on his own. What kind of paint are we allowed to use? Izuku asks, lifting his cup of tea to his mouth. At this point, with how often he comes by Nizu's office, he may as well have his own teacup. Any kind. Support should be able to help you there. Nizu leans forwards, resting his elbows on his knees. You don't need to know any of this. Paint guns are harmless, which is why there's no laws regarding them. Why are you really asking me these questions? Izuku blinks. What? You can find answers to all of your questions fairly easily online, and some of them flat out don't matter. Whatever brand of paint you use has no bearing on the game, so what are you really after? Izuku's phone chews that moment to vibrate, and he picks it up from the table, briefly reading the notification. Then he looks up at Nizu and gives a sweet smile, letting all traces of nervousness fade away. Plan 9 is complete, and there's no reason for Izuku to be in Nizu's office anymore. Nizu leans back, an almost proud smile on his face, and Izuku doesn't doubt he figured out Izuku was up to something, even if he didn't know what. Then run along. You don't want to look suspicious to your classmates, after all. Izuku grins and heads for the door, but he thinks better of it and turns around. Nizu. I do have one genuine question. Shoot. Snipe has gun classes, right? Snipe isn't allowed to help your members with gun training. What if they're not my members yet? Nizu's eyes glint, following Izuku's train of thought. I suppose that's not against the rules. Perfect. Izuku leaves the office with plans to drop by the support lab later in the day and find out where Snipe is. Kingpin, the Mafia Game Rulebook Chapter 3. Objectives Objective 9. Hacking. Hack into Nizu's computer and gain access to file 6234242263. Doc November 2nd Day 2:10:40 Izuku swings by the support lab during free PRD. Uraraka wanted to tag along with him, but Izuku reminded her that Azui wanted to train with her, and Uraraka sheepishly apologized for sending him off alone. Izuku waved her off, saying it was fine, and now he's somehow gotten wrapped up into holding an obnoxious amount of wires as Hatsum runs around the support lab. He's not sure who's screaming, he thinks both of them. Izuku is yelling about being made into a stand, and Hatsum is just screaming incoherently. All in all, it sounds pretty normal. Izuku has only been hanging around Hatsum for a day, and he's already gotten roped into her chaos. At some point, Hatsum trips over the wires, and Izuku goes flying with her, and then they're yelling about that, blaming each other. It's all fun and games though, because yeah, Izuku's throat is going to hurt later, but the arguing is entertaining in a strange way. Kinda like debating. Yelling at someone is a lot more fun when he's not trying to pummel them into the ground and avoid getting pummeled himself, looking at you, Kacchan and Todoroki. Eventually, Hatsum pulls herself to her feet and starts collecting wires, and Izuku, bless his kind heart, helps her. Keep up the playful banter, and somehow there ends up being a competition to collect more wires, which ends up with the lab being spotless in 2 minutes and Izuku and Hatsum having similar-sized piles and arguing over who won. Keeping up the angry streak, Hatsum turns to him with a fire in her eyes. "Oh yeah, can I rant about that stupid file Objective 9 was for?" "Sure," Izuku replies, currently pushing their wire piles together to make one big stack. Hatsum takes a deep breath in, and then she shouts, "I did all that goddamn hacking yesterday and the file was the stupid camera password." "What?" Izuku yells, waving his arms wildly, and some of the wires clatter to the floor. "You've got to be kidding me, I know right?" She glares at the hidden camera in the support lab. "I mean, come on Nizu, we did all that work to get your keycard and you just give the passcode away?" And then they promptly burst into laughter. Izuku isn't necessarily a tactical genius. He lacks the proper training and experience to be called one. But that doesn't mean he can't be strategic, and that doesn't mean he can't make brilliant plans. One of Izuku's strategical strengths is his ability to layer plans. He can create a plan that seems straightforward on a surface level, but there's 7 different layers hidden under it, and you could sift through 10 layers of motivation before you got to the actual intention behind the plan. Izuku's strength lies in playing the long game, which applies to the keycard. While gaining access to the cameras prematurely was certainly an advantage, he knew Plan 9, the hacking plan, was going to happen very early on. The keycard wasn't about gaining access to the cameras. It was about learning Nizu's coding patterns so Hatsum could get the file. There was no way Nizu was going to make it easy to hack into Yui, so the more practice Hatsum got, the better. And that's exactly why he and Hatsum laugh now. There's no reason to be upset when the plan worked anyways. Sure, it's a bit frustrating that Hatsum did all that hacking and Izuku all that misdirecting, and Nizu just gave them the passcode anyways. But it wasn't a waste. Nothing they do during this month is going to be a waste. Even if it doesn't have a big impact, everything they do is intentional. They aren't wasting any time. "You're a genius," Midoriya, Hatsum says, smiling brightly. "At least I didn't waste any time." And you know how to earn checkmate. As soon as Hatsum learned about the camera in the support lab, they were quick to make a set of code over text. Almost all of their plans are labeled, even smaller ones. The plans related to the objectives have numbers, like how Plan 9 was for the 9th objective. Other plans have random names related to the plan itself, though most of them are drafts and might not end up being used. Checkmate is a much smaller plan, one that doesn't have as much of a bearing as others do, but they made a code for it anyways to instill paranoia in anyone listening in. It's also one that spans the entire month, since that's the whole point of the plan. Essentially, Plan Checkmate is to just F with Nizu. That's it. That's the whole plan. But it sounds more interesting saying checkmate than give Nizu more entertainment. Izuku flips his curly hair. "Thank you." Hatsum barks a laugh at Izuku's failed attempt at being dramatic. If the Mafia was always meant to have access to the cameras, do you think the passcode he gave you is different to the one you hacked for? Oh, probably, Hatsum says, returning to the pile of wires. I wouldn't be surprised if he made it so certain cameras and information are off limits to the Mafia, but it's stuff we'd have access to. Not that we're really gonna be using it. She shoots a pointed look at the camera, but I wouldn't be surprised if data is left out of the objective cameras. Should we use the objective cameras then? Izuku asks, now working on pushing the wires out of the way. I don't want to accidentally ruin any of Yui's security. Not that I don't trust your skills, but I'd feel awful if we unintentionally broke something important. I mean, we are the Mafia, Hatsum points out. We can bend the rules a little bit. But yeah, I see what you mean. How about we use the objective cameras, but we keep the real ones just in case. Deal. Finally, the two of them managed to push the pile of wires aside, though it was more like Izuku did the heavy lifting while Hatsum watched. Izuku dusts his hands and turns to the support student. So, time to start GB, right? Yep, Hatsum exclaims, and she gives a maniacal smile. That's gotta be one of my favorite plans. To be fair, it is the most intricate plan. Hatsum cackles. Everyone is so gonna hate us after this. They aren't that. Is Izuku going to lose all his carefully crafted friendships over this game? Are his friends going to turn on him, calling him a villain? Will he be able to look them in the eye? Will they be able to look him in the eye? Hey, Hatsum says, waving a hand in front of his face. Izuku snaps his gaze up. Remember, this is just a game in the end. It's no worse than playing villains versus heroes. If your friends can't see past that, they're pretty stupid. Izuku wrinkles his nose. Don't insult my friends. Hatsum laughs, moving to an invention. You insulted me earlier during that screaming match. Don't give me that bullshit. You insulted me too. At least my insults were creative. Yours were weak. You called me a small mite looking but beach? I hardly call that creative. Hatsum lifts an eyebrow, expression amused. The green bean swears. To not a green bean, broccoli boy. Shut the F up, Hatsum May. Ooh, hitting me with the full name. I hate you. No you don't. I do, no you don't. Hey Mito. A small smirk rises on Hatsum's face. My wire pile was bigger. If Izuku tackles her and they end up in a play fight, with Izuku using his quirk to destroy the wires a cackling Hatsum throws at him, the only thing that will catch them is the camera. Oh, and Hatsum definitely screams at him later for destroying all her wires. November 2nd day 2:11:50. When Snipe walks out of the teacher's lounge, the last person he is expecting outside the door is Hatsum May. He's heard both horror stories and impressive tales about the girl. Power Loader constantly complains about her eccentric nature and his headache as a result, but she's praised as one of the best support students Yui has ever had. He's heard she's passionate and enthusiastic, to the point of avoiding basic hygiene and self-care to finish an invention. While that sort of drive is respectable, Snipe doesn't want any student, whether or not they're one of his, to burn themselves out. So when he steps out of the lounge and is greeted by the sight of a pink-haired girl with ash on her face and bouncing on her toes, Snipe is slightly scared. Hi, Snipe Sensei, Hatsum exclaims, bounding over to him. I need your help with... You teach a gun class, right? Snipe doesn't know where this is going, but he already doesn't like it. His gun class is reserved for third and sometimes second-year students, occasionally branching out to first years depending on the quirk. It's not a class to treat lightly, and definitely not one for the faint of heart. Yes, though it's a second and third-year class. What? I was wondering if you could teach a couple first years. I've been working on my capture gun, and I want to branch out to other types, but not a lot of first years have a license, so Snipe size. Who are you interested in? And Hatsum lists off 3 students, one of which gets a raised eyebrow from Snipe, and Hatsum is quick to clarify she wants that student to learn to properly put together a gun, not necessarily how to shoot it. And why should I do this? Because heroes need support gear, and I can't give it to them if they're not allowed to use it? Hatsum flashes a toothy smile. Plus, I already asked Nizu, and he said it's okay so long as you're willing to. Sounds like the rat. He runs a hand down his face. Fine. Send them to me after school. Class starts at 16:20. Yache Hatsum cheers, throwing her hands up and jumping on her toes. Thanks, Snipe Sensei. No, and then the girl is running off. Problem? November 2nd day 2:12:30 tracking down Shinso takes way too long. Izuku has the 5 minutes it takes to go to the bathroom to find the boy and convince him to help, despite not being able to recruit him and so obviously being in the Mafia and they're not that close of friends and they've only interacted twice and both times they were fighting. Focus Izuku slaps his cheeks lightly, scanning the hallways for purple hair. Shinso should have lunch at this time, so finding him shouldn't be this difficult. About a minute of darting down hallways and frettingly mumbling, Izuku realizes he has Hatsum practically on speed dial, who in turn has access to cameras all over the school. Shooting off a quick text that gets an even quicker response, Izuku heads for the right wing of the school. He's on a time crunch, having told his friends he needed to use the bathroom, which only gave him a few minutes before it started to get suspicious. In hindsight, he should have said he was talking to a teacher or something, but there's not much he can do about it now. Spotting a bout of purple hair, Izuku makes sure it's the person he wants before shouting, "Shinso," and promptly jumping up and latching himself to the boy's back in an impromptu piggyback ride that sends them both stumbling. It's Shinso's balance that manages to keep them upright, and Izuku has the gall to feel sheepish. "Sorry," he says, and Shinso puts his hands on Izuku's legs to avoid being choked. "Can you let go?" "Yeah." Izuku scrambles off the taller boy, red-faced and forgetting what he wanted to say. He shakes his head. "Can I talk to you?" Sure." "Great," Izuku beams, grabbing his wrist and dragging Shinso to an empty classroom, where he flicks on the lights and closes the door. "SSO, I was wondering if you could help me," Izuku says, taking a deep breath to curb his nervous stuttering. "If that's okay with you." "And why would I do that?" Shinso asks bluntly, leaning against a desk. Because it's what a hero would do." Shinso stares at him, eyes searching for some hidden reason. Izuku can relate. His former classmates pulled cruel pranks on him before, and the situation is already suspicious enough. Oh God. Izuku literally dragged this barely acquaintance into an empty room and asked for help and is stuttering, and this looks really bad. "What do you want?" Shinso questions. I know you don't like socializing, but you can be really convincing and know exactly what to say to people, so I was wondering if you could help me convince some of my classmates to take a gun class. Hatsum is making me get test dummies for her, and I wanted your help." Shinso squints. "Can't you just ask your classmates? Why do you need me?" Shinso has a point. It would be 10 times easier to just ask his classmates himself. But if it all came from him, it would be obvious he's up to something, whereas having multiple people ask makes it seem like Hatsum really is making them get guinea pigs. Plus, he wants to see the limits of Shinso's quirk. Izuku sighs. "I want to see what your quirk can do. What exactly does brainwashing entail? How much can you manipulate?" Shinso scowls. "I don't manipulate. Can you alter memories? Can you implant suggestions that last even when your brainwashing is over? Say you brainwash someone to believe something, as soon as they snap out of your brainwashing, how long does it take to revert to their old way of thinking?" The Gene student blinks. I've never tried suggestions." "Then now is the perfect time." Izuku bounces lightly. "You can test your quirk and help me." Shinso raises an eyebrow, but Izuku can tell he's winning him over. "I still think it would be easier to just ask one of your 50 billion friends. Is this some of your weird "I have it'll help you" thing?" Izuku rubs his neck sheepishly. "Maybe." Shinso sighs. "You're not going to relent until I agree, are you?" "Nope." Shinso groans, trailing a hand down his face. "Fine. Who do you need me to get?" November 2nd day 2:12:30 2 days into the game, and the police have found nothing. Not that there's anything to be found. The Mafia hasn't acted at all, which can be reasoned as not having enough members, or they're planning something. It's most likely the former, as with only the Kingpin and one other member, there isn't much of a Mafia. On the other hand, Todoroki is slightly appalled he hasn't noticed anything off with his classmates. Which he supposes is a good thing. It means none of his class are the Kingpin or the member. But at the same time, it could also mean someone in his class is a terrific liar, and Todoroki intends to weed them out. A few people have acted out of the ordinary, but not enough to be fishy. Mina and Kaminari have had joking fights, claiming the other is in the Mafia. Ida has been more alert than ever, always scanning the room. Yaoyorozu is uncharacteristically quiet. Uraraka side-eyes anyone outside of the Deku squad, and Midoriya has been going to support more often. None of that screams Mafia. Mina and Kaminari always act like this. He knows Ida wants to help the police more than anything. Yaoyorozu admitted on day one that she could hardly stomach the idea of their classmates lying to each other. Uraraka enthusiastically declared herself against the Mafia, and Midoriya is working with Hatsum to get new gear in exchange for finding the girl test dummies. Plus he can't be in the Mafia anyways. And Todoroki knows all of them are awful liars. Kendo had been quick to approach him on the first day to get his number, claiming the two of them would have to be in contact to pool information. Kendo also gave him Yanagi's number, the girl being Kendo's selected officer, and Todoroki provided Midoriya's number as well. Kendo started a group chat as well as most of the conversations, and for the most part, the chats are pretty dry. None of them have found anything strange in 1B either, leading Todoroki to believe the Kingpin is a student from another course. Which would make sense. The only police are hero students, so putting the Kingpin in another department would make it much harder to put a stop to the game. There's not much evidence for it outside of that, but to be fair, there's not much evidence for anything. Todoroki wished to catch the Kingpin within the first couple of days, but it's day 2 and there's no sign of them. The Kingpin is hiding like a coward, and Todoroki is beginning to get frustrated. The longer the game goes on for, the harder it'll be to win. And Todoroki has no intentions of letting the villains win. So he'll wait and he'll watch. As soon as the Mafia makes a move, he'll be on to them. So long as they catch the Kingpin, the other members don't matter. The Kingpin can't hide within numbers when the good guys outnumber them 10-1. Catching the Kingpin early on was a naive thought anyways. Of course the Mafia wouldn't act with only a few members. Plus, the longer this goes on for, the safer the Mafia will believe they are, and they'll begin to get sloppy. That's when the police will catch them. There was never a chance of catching the Kingpin early. Todoroki throws out that way of thinking and instead lets his eyes scan the cafeteria. Uraraka and Ida enthusiastically chat, with Azui and Aoyama occasionally making comments. No matter how much he dislikes it, every one of them is a suspect. If one of them gets recruited, Todoroki will be the first to find out who. November 2nd, day 2, 1300 hours. Momo is no stranger to people asking her for homework help. She doesn't mind either. Tutoring is quite fun, and she's honored her classmates come to her when they have questions. She doesn't want to come across as a know-it-all, but her classmates repeatedly assure her that her intelligence is a good thing. So when Midoriya shyly approaches her at lunch with a paper in his hand, Momo smiles sweetly. "Hello, Midoriya," she greets politely, setting her chopsticks down on her tray to give the boy her full attention. "What do you need help with?" Yum-Tuchi takes a deep breath. Tu was starting on the math homework and was wondering if you could help me with problem 18. He jumps almost a foot into the air and waves his hands. "Not that you have to, of course, I'd be honored," Momo replies, and she gestures to the seat across from her. "Have a seat and let me know what's confusing you." "I'll do my best to help," Midoriya smiles and blushes, taking the seat across from her. SSO2 started the proof, but I don't know where to go next. Proofs, the most common thing her classmates come to her for. She can understand why. It took her a while to understand them herself, and even then, ones with many steps still take a bit to figure out. Looking at the problem, it's actually one of the easier ones on the worksheet, and Momo's a little confused as to why Midoriya needs help with it when he's gotten others, but no matter. Maybe he's just tired today. "Okay, you've already stated angle A and angle C are complementary, and angle B and angle C are complementary, so the next thing to do would be define that. So angle A plus angle C equals 90 degrees, and angle B and angle C equal 90 degrees. Midoriya questions, unsure if he's come to the right conclusion. "Correct." Midoriya's pencil scratches against the paper as he writes, and she sees a light of recognition gleam in his eyes. "Oh, so now I need to apply the transitive property and then I can just subtract angle B from both sides. You got it," Momo compliments, a genuine smile spreading on her face. It warms her heart to see her classmates understand the homework due to her input. Are there any others you had trouble with? No, I think I got the rest. Which confuses Momo a little bit. The other proofs on the worksheet are much harder and have more steps, so why didn't Midoriya understand that one? Especially when similar ones are on the homework. Thank you, Yaoyorozu, my pleasure, she says, and Midoriya gathers the worksheets into a folder, where a sticky note stands out. She doesn't mean to snoop, but she sees her name on the note and can't help but inquire, did you need me for something else? Midoriya looks up bashfully. H. Hatsum wants me to get more test dummies for her, so I was wondering would you be willing to take a gun class with Snipe Sensei after school? A gun class? Yaoyorozu ponders it. Her fighting style usually incorporates a staff. She hasn't even thought of guns, seeing them to be too villainous. But her quirk would be perfect for them, and she can easily make non-lethal RBB bullets, but then why did Hatsum may need her as a test dummy? Sure, I'm open to the idea, she replies, but I can make a gun myself, so why does Hatsum need me as a tester? Midoriya exclaims. To think she said something about in order to use the guns you make, you would need a license, or at least some proper training on how to put a gun together. I'm gonna ask some other people to attend too, so you won't be alone or anything. That makes sense. She doesn't actually know how to construct a gun, not properly, and having one could be a huge advantage with her quirk. She saw Hatsum's capture gun during the sports festival, so if Momo could gain the blueprints and the training necessary to use it, guns would only add more to her arsenal. I'd love to, she says, giving Midoriya a smile. Thank you for considering me. Of course, the boy beams back. Snipe Sensei said classes start after school today at 16:20. You already set things up. Yeah. Yaoyorozu's heart warms and she grins brightly. Thank you, this is a great opportunity, Midoriya laughs, rubbing the back of his neck. It's no problem. Momo has no qualms about helping other people learn something new, but it's nice to be helped for a change. November 2nd day, 1400 hours. It's not that Uraraka wants to be suspicious of her classmates, especially of her friends. But something is going on with Midoriya. Ever since yesterday, he's been spending less time with them and more time with Hatsum Mei in the support lab. Uraraka isn't necessarily mad about it. She doesn't dictate where Deku goes or who he can hang out with. But what gear is so complicated he has to go to the support lab and can't just send in an application? At first, she thought Midoriya could have been in the Mafia, but then she remembers the criteria that police officers can't be Mafia members, so she rules that one out quickly. She wonders if Hatsum is the kingpin, which surprisingly seems likely. No one in their class is acting suspicious, other than Midoriya going off to support more often, so it's plausible that the kingpin is in another department. Aside from that, there's not much evidence she'll have to look into it. So far, that's the most likely conclusion. Or the one she doesn't want to think about. She's paired against Deku during hero lessons. They're sparring with a partner as a warm-up, and she stands across from Midoriya on a mat, with Uraraka practicing defense and Deku offense. So, Uraraka starts, blocking a blow from her partner. What's up with Hatsum? Hatsum. Deku stutters, faltering, which gives Uraraka a chance to switch to offense. Midoriya acts quickly and defends against her advance. Did I forget to mention the support gear? No. Uraraka blocks a non-powered kick. Izuku said they'd be using quirks later, so whether they wanted to spar with them was up to them. But why couldn't you just send in an application? Midoriya tries to sweep her legs out from under her, but she predicts his move and avoids it accordingly. It's something I'm really excited about, so I wanted to help with the process. Plus it needs to be hooked up to my phone, so I kinda have to be there. Hooked up to your phone? Uraraka questions. What is it? Come on, the suspense is killing me. Deku smiles shyly. It's a surprise. Uraraka sighs dramatically, and they fall back into a rhythm. The topic is far from dropped, at least on her part. A few punches and kicks later, and she's asking again, what's this about Hatsum using you to get guinea pigs? Honestly, I think it's her way of shooing me out, Deku says with a light laugh. Otherwise, I'd be hovering over her shoulder. A sense of dread begins to creep up her stomach. Deku isn't a support student, and while she's not saying he isn't smart, he has no reason to be hovering over her shoulder. There's not much he can do to help make support gear other than send in a request and apparently provide his phone. There's no reason for him to be in the support room as often as he is, unless she was right, wasn't she? It's the conclusion she doesn't want to think about, but she's forced to, because it's highly likely. Deku, he's dating Hatsum, isn't he? Uraraka might be jealous, and she might really like Midoriya, but if he's dating someone else, she's not going to infringe. That goes against girl code. It doesn't stop the deep sadness and hopelessness that stabs her heart, and it doesn't make her want to cry any less. Hatsum is smart and talented and innovative and great and much greater than her, and Deku deserves Hatsum, he does, but is it so wrong to want to be her? Why can't Uraraka be Hatsum? Why can't Uraraka be smart and talented and innovative and great? Uraraka? Deku asks, concern evident in his tone. At some point, they stopped fighting, and Midoriya lingers around her, uncertain whether or not he can put his hands on her shoulders. Are you okay? Do you need to go to recovery, girl? Do you want me to get Aizawa-sensei? Or do you want Asutsu, or maybe Ida, or do you just want a hug? I'm okay, Uraraka says, even though the words feel forced from her throat and spat through clenched teeth. Slowly, she nods her head. I'm alright. I got distracted. We can keep sparring. Are you sure? Deku asks, and she can't look up and meet his eyes, she can't. She knows what they'll look like, knows she'll see hints of concern and empathy and worry, she knows because she's practically studied his eyes. Yes, she replies, and she takes a deep breath, taking extra care to feel the way her ct rises and falls and how air enters her lungs, and even though Deku is the last person she wants to see right now, but it's not his fault, and it's not Hatsum's, and she won't blame either of them. She grits her teeth and they continue sparring, with Midoriya throwing an occasional glance her way. A part of her realizes halfway through the exercise that she never asked Deku if he's dating Hatsum, but she berates herself because that's an invasive and personal question. When Midoriya wants to tell her, he will. Why hasn't he, though? November 2nd, day 2/16/15. Momo realizes about 5 minutes before the gun class is scheduled to start that she has no idea where she's going. In hindsight, she was too excited and warmed by the thought of Midoriya doing a kind thing for her that she forgot to ask for details. She knows the time and who's teaching it, but beyond that, she knows nothing about this class. What if it's a trap or a prank? Not that Midoriya is the type of person to do either of those, but with this whole Mafia thing going on, she wouldn't put anything past anybody. After wandering the campus for a couple minutes, she remembers there's a campus shooting range, and that's a good start. It's on the other side of the school, and briefly checking her phone, Momo looks up and down the hallway for Ida or staff before she sprints like her life depends on it. While she's certain that being 1 of 2 minutes late won't hinder the class, Momo doesn't want to disappoint Snipe-sensei, especially when she doesn't know him all that well. Snipe usually deals with upperclassmen, so she's only run into him during the USJ or while he supervised their class. Plus, this is a valuable opportunity, and she can't afford to mess it up. With about a minute to spare, Momo arrives at the range, and to her delight, she sees Snipe standing by the door. I'm guessing you're here for the class? Snipe asks, leaning against the doorframe. He kindly doesn't mention her heavy breathing and sweaty appearance from running across the campus in about 4 minutes. Yais, she says, bowing politely before she straightens her posture. Thank you for having me. Snipe opens the door and gestures inside. No problem. When she walks in, the first thing she notices is how small the class is, being made up of 6 students, including herself. She doesn't recognize 3 of them, and they appear to be 2nd or 3rd years. As for the other 2, one of them looks vaguely familiar. With pitch-black skin and starkly contrasting white hair, she recognizes him as Shirhai Kuwaro of Class 1B. His quirk is blurred in her memory, so she can't judge whether his appearance is surprising or not. As for the other student, Shoji nods at her in acknowledgement, and she's grateful for a familiar face. That's everyone, Snipe comments, closing the door behind him. An air of seriousness falls over the classroom. All of you are rookies, so first years, don't worry about being behind, and upperclassmen, don't worry about the lessons being dumbed down. This is still the standard gun class, despite having first years. Snipe takes a moment to look at each of them. First lesson, never put your hand on a gun unless you intend to use it. whether that's for threatening someone or shooting them. Second lesson, never put your finger on the trigger unless you intend to shoot. Guns can easily kill or permanently maim people, so you better know exactly where you're aiming and the damage you could cause before you point a gun at somebody. Third lesson, a gun is a tool. Treat it as such. There's no need to hold it like glass. Fourth lesson, he gestures to a table with a myriad of parts, is how to put a gun together. Follow me over to the table. The class goes on for an hour, and Momo leaves feeling a bit silly. When she successfully put a gun together and held it in her hands, she felt stupid. Why has she been making cannons as her long-range weapon when she could be making guns? They're a lot lighter, a lot less time-consuming, and would take a lot less lipids. She can't help but feel extremely grateful to Midoriya for setting this up for her. She'll have to thank him somehow. November 3rd, day 3-4 o'clock. It's been bugging Shinso all day. Ever since Midoriya approached him for help, there's been a weird buzz in Shinso's mind, like a puzzle piece that doesn't quite match. Something about the situation isn't adding up, but for the life of him he can't figure out what it is. It's practically on the tip of his tongue, but Shinso can't seem to reach a conclusion that makes any sense. He gets an enthusiastic text at 10, thanking him for his help. For a second, he wonders how the hell Midoriya got his number, but the fact that he's friends with, or at least hangs out around, Hatsume is enough of an explanation. When Midoriya had asked him about suggestion brainwashing, Shinso had initially been opposed to the idea. His quirk doesn't allow people to do a task that requires thinking. Should he brainwash Shoji and Kuwaro minutes before the lesson, it would work, but they'd likely be confused as to how they arrived and where they were. But if he, say, implanted a suggestion, they would go. Midoriya has framed it as altering memories. It's an ability Shinso subconsciously knows he has, judging by how some people remember being brainwashed and others don't, but it's not something he's actively tried to control. By suggestions, Midoriya had meant implanting a specific memory to persuade someone to do something later down the line, or to act a certain way. In this case, he'd brainwashed Shoji and Kuwaro to remember to go to a gun lesson after school. He wasn't brainwashing them to go, he was brainwashing them to have certain memories of applying for the lesson. He didn't think it would work, but apparently it did. Which is astounding and changes the game, but that's not what he's thinking about. Why come to him? Midoriya has an entire class full of people to ask for help, and Shinso knows Midoriya could very well have asked the two himself. Other than challenging his quirk, there was no reason to ask Shinso. Midoriya could have gone to any of his classmates, to any of his friends, and asked them for help. He could have gotten Hatsume herself to ask around. Midoriya could have asked around. Shinso didn't fit into the picture anywhere. Plus, why would Midoriya want to brainwash his classmates into attending? Wouldn't it be easier to just ask? Why force them to go against their wills? It sounds way too villainous for Wait. Shinso had brushed off the Mafia game when it was announced. The principal said it was a year-wide game, but with heroic students and heroic students only as police officers, Shinso didn't feel the need to participate. It was unlikely the Kingpin ended up in Gen Ed, and even more unlikely anyone from their department was recruited. His plan was to stay out of the way, and if he came across something suspicious, he'd report it to one of the officers. But if, say, a Mafia member approached him to earn his trust, wouldn't that explain away the situation? Wait, police officers can't be Mafia members. Maybe the Kingpin is Hatsume. She wouldn't be able to send out Midoriya, as he can't be a member, but she could disguise it as needing test dummies. Putting the Kingpin in a department other than heroics would make it harder for the police to weed out the Mafia, but less dramatic of a reveal. Plus, Midoriya is naturally helpful, so Hatsume could easily mask her intentions as needing assistance. Still, something about that conclusion bugs him. If Hatsume wants to recruit him later down the line or use him or something, how could she send Midoriya after him? Midoriya can't be a Mafia member, so wouldn't it be easier to send her actual recruit after Shinso? Or even Hatsume herself? Why Midoriya? Why send the person who can't even be recruited into the Mafia? Wait. Selected officers can't be recruited, but no one ever said they can't be the Kingpin. So what if it's the other way around? What if Midoriya is the Kingpin and Hatsume is his recruit? That would make more sense. He could mask Hatsum as the kingpin, using the police officer role as a disguise. He asked Shinso because if Midoriya went around asking for people to take a class, it would look out of place, but if multiple people did, and better yet, if said people didn't remember who told them to go, it's a perfect cover, and a perfect chance to gain Shinso's trust, as well as intel on the limits of his quirk. It's glaringly obvious now that he thinks about it. Midoriya is seemingly innocent and cute and friendly, so being a villain doesn't match his image. Plus, he's friends with Todoroki, who's won as police officer, which means the reveal will spark chaos. And to Shinso's knowledge, Midoriya is both smart and strong, capable of pulling off strategical plans. Midoriya is such a perfect choice for a kingpin. There's two options here. Shinso could take this to the police, have them corner Midoriya, or follow him around and effectively end the game right here. Or if his assumption is correct, Midoriya might want to recruit him later. Shinso has to be either on the side of the police or the side of the Mafia, so he can't just hide this. So what does Shinso do with this information? November 3rd, day 3, 8 o'clock. It's not the first time she's been called to the support lab. She's surprised Hatsum May has her number, and even more surprised when the inventor requested for her specifically. She hasn't filed for any new gear, nor has she interacted with support recently. There's not any big reason for Hatsum to want to visit her, but she ultimately doesn't question it. After all, she's a hero in training, and any new support gear is helpful, not that she needs it. Which is why she finds herself wandering down the halls of Yui about 20 minutes before class starts. She should have arrived a lot earlier, but if need be, they have 2 gym periods today, so she can always go back. She's sure Aizawa-sensei will let her. And if not, there's always lunch. She hasn't actually visited the support lab before. She knows the layout of Yui practically like the back of her hand, but that doesn't mean she's gone into every single classroom. There's far too many to have visited them all, and again, she doesn't actually need support gear. It's easy to find Hatsum's room when there's a nameplate right outside the door. She knocks a couple times, unsure of whether she should be barging in or not, and Hatsum yells from inside. "Come in." When she steps through the door, someone is immediately slamming it shut, and she feels the itch of her quirk beginning to activate. What? She trails off as she takes in the person who closed the door. The curly, green hair and freckles are familiar, but the expression on his face is not. Midoriya smiles at her, but it's not the same shy, polite smile she's seen before. Oh no. This smile is excited. "Welcome to the Mafia." A spark of confusion flies through her. "You can't be in the Mafia," she points out. "You're a police officer." "A selected one," Midoriya emphasizes, shooting her a sly smirk as he walks further into the room. Hatsum is beside a table, disinterested in the conversation. Selected officers can't be recruited, but they never said anything about being the kingpin. That's a really smart move. Not many people have read the rulebook cover to cover like she has, and even so, no one else has realized that loophole exists. They just assumed not being a Mafia member meant being related to the Mafia at all, but looking back on it, Principal Nizu's wording makes a lot more sense in hindsight. And while she's sure Midoriya had no input into being chosen as their selected officer, she's also sure that he was in no way opposed. Her eyes drift to Hatsum in the back of the room, the girl appearing to be tinkering with something. "I'm assuming you're the other member?" "Yep," the girl chirps, not looking up from her device. "Welcome to the inner circle," and that's when it hits her. She's in this now. She's a part of this. She's the villain. She's going to have to lie to her friends, to work for evil, to help the wrong side. She's going to be a liar, and it'll deceive her classmates she's supposed to represent, no doubt attaching more of a bad reputation to 1A. When Midoriya looks back at her with concern, there's an odd tug at her mind. "Hey, are you okay?" he asks, walking over to her, and that's when she notices her breathing is a little heavier. "I'm sorry this is so sudden, but I don't know how else to do it." And that's when she realizes it's acting. Not the concern, no, the confidence, the straightforwardness. It's not that the kingpin is Midoriya, it's that Midoriya is the kingpin. He's changing himself to fit the role, sure, but ultimately, the exercise is called the Mafia game for a reason. It's all just a game. She's not becoming a villain, she's playing the role of one. And so she sets her jaw. Can you fill me in, she asks, and Midoriya gives a relieved smile, though there's a hint of nervousness in his eyes. Sure. First, I think you should read the Kingpin rulebook so I don't have to try and explain everything. Second, you need to pick a code name. I had the luxury of being handed one, so Hatsum can tell you about how she chose. With that, the girl's attention peaks up, and she turns away from her creation to smile at her, although it shows off her pointed teeth and makes her think of a feral animal. Right, so, my code name is Livewire, or just LW if you want. My role is to do stuff with tech, so Livewire relates to that, but it could also relate to electricity or just a bubbly person, so it's not obviously tied to me. Honestly, I'd look up synonyms to your quirk and pick whatever sounds cool. That's not a bad idea, Midoriya says, already pulling out his phone. Here, I'll pull up a thesaurus. Oh, it's all right, she protests, waving her hands. I have my own PH, but then Midoriya's phone is being shoved into her hands, and he smiles sheepishly. Sorry, I got a little carried away. It's all right, she assures, already typing. Oh, afterwards, can you put in your number? Midoriya asks, walking over to a countertop and reaching over it to grab a black book. I'm gonna make a group chat, so you'll get Hatsum's number too? Okay. She files that away for later, focusing on the plethora of potential codenames. She scrolls through them, figuring that the right one will jump out at her. And it does. Midoriya grins as she hands back his phone, and he trades it for a book with red words printed on the cover. Read through that, and I'll tell you about our plan to get the next objective. When she hits the objectives section of the books, she looks up at Midoriya with a mixture of horror and sympathy. He shrugs, saying something about already having a plan, and she swallows down nausea. 10 minutes ago, she could barely stomach the idea of lying to her classmates, but this is a whole new level. But Assembly is committed, and when Hatsum tells her about Plan 10, she realizes exactly why the Kingpin recruited her. November 3rd, day 3/12/30 today wasn't supposed to be a busy day. They were going to lie low, with Hatsum starting on some tech and finishing up on the mini cameras she'd made Izuku as a cover story. He busied himself with filling in their newest recruit, Assembly, and pushing down fresh waves of guilt that rose as he explained his plans. It's not that he doesn't want to go through with them. At this point, he's committed, and they've already begun anyways. There's no reason not to follow through. But sometimes, usually late at night, there's a claw of anxiety wrapped around his heart and he can't seem to breathe deeply enough to calm down. If he got a mere 3 hours of sleep last night, no one needs to know. Plus, they're simply biding their time before their debut. Plan 5 is starting, and as soon as it's completed, the game gets a lot more serious. It's better to enjoy the calm before the storm while they can and kill time. The more the police think they aren't doing anything, the looser their guards get, while at the same time, they grow more paranoid. Not that the Mafia wasn't already on the down low. The point is, today was supposed to be an easy day. But then he hears a voice call out his name. Midoriya. When he turns around and faces Shinso, he waves brightly and ushers his friends ahead. They had just been dismissed for lunch, so he can afford to miss a couple minutes. Uraraka promises to get a tray of katsudon for him, and he thanks her with a grateful smile. Ida even offers to wait for him, but Midoriya waves him off, thanking him for the thought but reasoning Shinso probably wants to talk to him alone. He turns his full attention to Shinso once his friends have began walking away. What do you need? Shinso hesitates, shifting from foot to foot. Can we not talk here? Izuku feels a sense of impending doom, like something is very, very wrong, but he pushes it aside, figuring it's some dumb anxiety or paranoia thing. That's his first mistake. Okay. He looks around the hallway. Where do you want to go? Shinsu's eyes dart from side to side, but then he sighs. Can I talk to you after school? I don't know, give you my number. And we can talk later. I know a cat cafe, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Okay, Izuku beams, squashing down his own nerves in favor of settling Shinsu's. I love cat cafes, but I never really get to go. Oh, we'll need permission. I can ask Aizawa-sensei. No, I'll ask during my training, Shinso replies, and he reaches into his pocket, pulling out his phone. So, right, Izuku fishes out his own phone, implementing his number into Shinsu's as the boy does the same. They trade back, and an awkward silence hangs over them for a few seconds. So lunch? Shinso offers and Izuku smiles. Let's go. Do you want to sit with me? Shinso blanches, and Izuku giggles at the boy's face. Okay. You have fun. When they part ways in the cafeteria, Izuku doesn't have long to question the conversation because he's swept up into his friend's chat about whether bird eyes are secretly cameras and if that makes Hawks a secret government agent. November 3rd, day 3:13:15 a.m. Few minutes before class starts again, Izuku gets a phone call. Azui is mid-sentence when his phone vibrates, and Azui stops talking to allow him to answer. Aoyama kindly quiets down, and Todoroki keeps his already closed mouth shut. The contact reads, "Mom," and Azui nods politely at him, like the angel she is. Midoriya is sure to flash her a grateful smile before he answers, pressing the phone against his ear. "Hi, Mom. Hey, I was just wondering if I'm supposed to go after school today." "No," Izuku says, shifting the phone so he can subtly press the volume buttons down. "I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do that." He adds a soft laugh to the end of his sentence. "What should I tell him then?" Izuku hums, biting his lip in contemplation. "Maybe something about having what you need." "Alright. Should we pretend to have more of a conversation, or can I wrap it up here?" "Okay, bye Mom, love you," Izuku replies, hanging up the phone. Aoyama, being the lovely attention seeker he is, promptly moves the conversation along without questioning Izuku. They all saw the contact name, after all, and even Azui, for all her bluntness, doesn't bother to question a call from his mother. It's pretty self-explanatory. If Izuku temporarily changed his mom's contact name to Inko, they don't need to know. It's nice to know this plan works, though. November 3rd, day 3:16:15 Izuku had been chatting with Todoroki and Ida when he'd gotten a text. A surprisingly sour-looking Uraraka hands him his phone, saying something about a text message. She seems so down ever since yesterday's sparring match where she went quiet out of the blue, and Izuku is half tempted to ignore the text in favor of his friend, but then he reads the message. Hatsume's finished his gear, his eyes gleam with excitement, but he squashes it down when he sees his friend's fallen face. "Uraraka, are you alright?" "HM. Oh," she perks up and rubs her neck. "Yeah. You got a text from Hatsume, right?" Izuku nods. "Yeah. My gear is done." He can't help the hint of delight that seeps into his tone. "But are you sure you're alright? You've seemed pretty down since yesterday by now." Izuku knows better than to ignore signs of his friend's sadness. The last thing they need is a repeat of the stain situation. To her credit, Uraraka does her best to brighten her features, but he doesn't miss the emptiness behind her eyes. "Yep, I'm a bit tired, though. I think this Mafia thing has everyone on edge." Izuku hides a wince. He can deal with his friends mentioning the Mafia game in theory, but as soon as he's faced with them, he wants nothing more than to blurt out he's the kingpin and get this game over with so things can go back to normal. Alas, it's still technically an exam and he can't afford to fail, not when his plans are starting to come to fruition. Doesn't make it easier to sit here and lie to his friends, though. "Yeah," he comments, glancing at Todoroki, who's walked a bit ahead next to Ida. Izuku and Uraraka trail behind the other two. "I wish they didn't have to pit us against each other." "I know, right?" Uraraka exclaims, gesturing wildly, and Izuku startles, not expecting the outburst from her. "Like, couldn't we have done anything else? I don't want to fight my friends. I don't want my friends to have to be villains. I don't want to suspect you guys." Izuku can relate to that, in a sense. He doesn't necessarily want to play the villain either, and that's unavoidable with some of the objectives. They're only 3 days into the game, and Izuku feels dirty. He feels like a fraud, he feels like a traitor, and he doesn't want to fight any of his friends either, but he takes a deep breath, and he reminds himself that his friends will probably still like him, probably still accept him, even if there's a voice screaming in the back of his mind that they'll hate him, they'll never want to see him again, it'll be exactly the same as, and he says, "I really hate it too. But think of it as just a game. That's what it is, right?" Uraraka looks at him, eyebrow raised. "They're forcing our friends to become villains. How is this just a game?" Izuku cringes. "Too mean. It's called the Mafia game for a reason, right? Two don't want to hate any of our classmates or friends because they did what they were told." Uraraka is silent, mulling over his words, and for a second, Izuku worries she's going to blurt out an accusation, she's going to call him a liar and say she wants nothing to do with him or worse. She'll, that makes sense, she replies instead, and Izuku has half a mind to put his hand over his racing heart. I didn't think that the Mafia members would feel guilty about it too. She beams at him. Surely they won't do anything too villainous, right? We're all heroes in training, so they'll know better and you'll catch them. I'm sure he wants to cry. He's aware the police and majority of students know the Mafia has objectives, but that's the extent of their knowledge. They don't know what those objectives are, they don't know just how bad it gets, just how much it'll affect them. There's a reason Izuku is worried about Shinso, there's a reason he's worried about recruiting students from his class, there's a reason he can't sleep at night anymore. Deku-kun? Uraraka asks, and Izuku notices that they've stopped walking and Todoroki and Ida have moved on ahead of them, with the girl waving them off. Why are you crying? Luckily, his tears are a common occurrence, so nothing about it is suspicious, but Izuku can't seem to put his thoughts into coherent sentences. I don't and he promptly bursts into tears again. Hey, don't cry, Uraraka chirps, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. Is it about the Mafia game? Izuku manages a nod. I don't want anyone to hate anyone after it, Uraraka smiles sweetly. I don't think our class could hate anyone, but then she squinches, minus Mineta, the perv, she offhandedly mumbles, but then she lightens, perking her head back up. I'll talk to them and if anyone tries to hate on you if the police loses, I'll punch them for you. He can't stop the laugh from bubbling out of his throat, and he probably looks insane, giggling while tears stream down his face, but his voice is exceptionally soft when he says, "Thank you, Uraraka." She beams back at him, with cheeks tinted slightly pinker, and then her face falls a little bit. You should probably go visit Hatsum, shouldn't you? Oh, right, he wipes his tears on his sleeve, tucking his phone back into his pocket. I'll get going then. Thanks for cheering me up. No problem. Do you want me to come with you? She eyes him with a strong amount of hope, but unfortunately he has Mafia things to talk to Hatsum about. The new gear is a surprise, remember? He flashes her a bright grin. I'll be sure to bring you around, though Hatsum wants to give this to lots of hero students, so I'm really just a first test dummy. Oh. Her crestfallen face almost makes Izuku backtrack, but Uraraka looks back up with a small, sad smile before he can say anything. Well, have fun. I can't wait to find out what the surprise gear is, and I can't wait to show you, Izuku says, bouncing on his toes. He starts dashing off in the direction of the support lab, waving over his shoulder. Bye, she echoes, watching him leave for a few seconds before jogging in the opposite direction, yelling for Ida and Todoroki to wait up. They'd only just began heading back to the dorms, so it takes a couple minutes for him to run back to Yui and scan his card. The students are allowed back on campus until curfew, so Izuku has no trouble getting back inside, and when he sees Aizawa and Shinso sparring outside, neither of them bat an eye. Shinso does get swept off his feet by Aizawa though, and Izuku winces in sympathy. He doesn't dwell on it, ripping open the door to the main building and hurrying through the halls. If Ida saw him, he's pretty sure his speed would give the boy a heart attack, which gets a laugh out of him. That probably looks super weird. If a teacher came along and saw a blur of green rush past, laughing to himself, they'd be thoroughly disturbed. Which is why Izuku is glad Hatsum has her own lab room, because otherwise, he'd be running into Power Loader, and he'd like to save some dignity today. Thank you very much. When Izuku bursts through the door, Hatsum is already standing there, and she immediately yells, "They're done." There's a small, black square in Hatsum's hand, and the girl excitedly beckons Izuku over, which looks eerily similar to just flapping her hands around in his direction. He speaks enough Hatsum to know what she means, and he eagerly bounds over. The girl reaches forward and grabs a handful of his shirt, pinning the box to his itsy. I'm gonna work on a flat, smaller circle design once we determine whether or not the camera itself works, so we should test that now. Izuku nods, pulling out his phone. Hatsum had created an app specifically for the camera. Does it sends the video feed from his camera directly to his phone, which depending on the setting, will either upload it to a drive or send it to a contact of his choice. Right now, said contact is set to Hatsum, But when he equips the final product to his hero costume, it'll stream to Aizawa. Hatsum fiddles with her own phone. If this baby works, you can keep it and wear it on your civilian clothes if you want. Or you can, use it. Actually, Shinso mentioned talking to me today, Midoriya brings up, pressing a tiny button on the side of the camera and watching a rim light up a faint red. He didn't really mention much. Does this record audio? 'Cause maybe I could put it inside a jacket or something. Hatsum rolls her eyes. Of course it records audio. Who do you take me for? You right? Hatsum grins, baring her teeth, and she shoves her phone in Izuku's face. It sends to me location and all this is perfect. While the mini hidden camera started out as a quick lie to power loader, Hatsum and Midoriya soon realized the potential of it as both a cover story and an actual support item. Izuku has a habit of getting into trouble, so having a hidden camera, especially one that can live stream to his teacher, is practically a gift from God. The test dummy thing isn't a lie, either. It would do their classmates some good to have cameras on them as well, so Izuku really is Hatsum's guinea pig. The sooner they can get the tech out, the better for their classmates, but worse for him, as it leaves him without a reliable cover. He'd considered a fake dating plan, but that had been shot down, as they needed that for later. Honestly, he could probably just say he and Hatsum are friends and leave it at that. Most of his class is either too comfortable with their friend group or too frightened by Hatsum to really question him. Plus, Izuku has a reputation of being overly friendly, so having relationships within other departments isn't highly unusual. At least, it wouldn't be if they weren't in the middle of an exam. Thanks a lot, Hatsum. Izuku beams, taking the camera off his shirt to fiddle with the clasp. I can keep the contact set as you for now, so you can listen in when I meet with Shinso. Hatsum hums, toying with the app on Izuku's phone and placing it beside her own to make sure everything's functioning. What's Shinso want with you anyways? I'm not sure. His eyebrows scrunch together, and he bites his lip. He seemed really nervous when he asked me. Maybe he wants my help with something. Maybe seems sketchy. Izuku agrees with that sentiment. He racks his brain for an answer. It's possible Shinso needs his help, but it seems unlike him to go to Izuku of all people for help. Maybe he feels as though Izuku owes him. Which he kinda does. Izuku doesn't ponder over it for long because his phone vibrates from its place on Hatsum's table. That's his second mistake. Shinso texted you, the girl informs him, and he walks over to the table to read it himself. I've got about an hour before I need to go, Izuku comments, and he looks Hatsum in the eye, feeling a grin start to take over his face. I have a new idea for tech, if you want. Of course I want it, Hatsum yells, shaking Izuku's shoulders. What is it? Izuku chuckles, letting Hatsum bounce on her toes and jerk him around. Have you ever made a gas mask? November 3rd, day 3/1740. Izuku's never been to a cat cafe, but he wasn't expecting this. From the outside, it looks like a regular coffee shop, with a brown and tan aesthetic. The shop name is printed in pretty cursive calligraphy, and the design of the storefront is simple but pleasing to the eye. Shinso had messaged Izuku a couple minutes ago, saying he already secured a table, so Izuku steals his nerves and walks inside. The interior continues the brown aesthetic, with a counter lining the side wall and tables in the open space. There's an area for the cats in the back, with a little door in case the kittens want privacy or need to be out of the way. During open hours, it appears they're allowed to wander around, and he finds Shinso sitting at a corner table by a window, petting one cat and letting another roam by his feet. Izuku breathes a sigh of relief at seeing the boy. On his way over, he'd been worried out of his mind that this was some sort of prank or setup or disaster waiting to happen, but it seems to be none of those. That's his third mistake. He walks over to Shinso, making sure the boy sees him approach. Hi, hey. Izuku pulls out a chair, seeing 2 drinks already set out on the table. I just ordered what I get, Shinso says as if he's a mind reader. Hope you don't mind. Not at all, Izuku says, picking up a cup and taking a sip. It's a bit too sweet for his tastes, but it's a lot better than what Hatsum has made. That girl is insane, and suddenly he understands how she can get 0 sleep and still function with high energy. Let's cut straight to the chase, Shinso says, and he leans forward, propping his chin on his hands. I know you're the kingpin. Izuku nearly spits out his drink. What's he supposed to do? But he's never been a good liar, at least not directly. He can act and lie by omission, but to outright deny this would only give more evidence to Shinsu's claim. But isn't this what he wanted? Didn't he want everything to end? Didn't he want to go back to normal? His plans are villainous, monstrous, evil, yet exciting. This whole game is a thrill, and despite the guilt that gnaws at his stomach, there's a part of him that wants to keep playing. They were doing so well. Hatsum has began researching for future tech, and their newest recruit, Assembly, is getting acquainted with all their plans. Izuku thought his excuses held up well, but he should have known better than to go to Shinso, should have known better than to risk it. He should have just asked Shoji and Kurwaro himself, should have taken the chance that it would look suspicious because now it's all over. Shinso holds up a hand. You hit it pretty well. Had you not come to me, I would have never guessed. That does nothing to steel Izuku's nerves. Shinso puts his chin in his hand, gazing out the window behind him. Were you planning on recruiting me? 3 I don't, there's no point in lying, I already know. Izuku digs his nails into his thigh. Okay, how's he going to play this? Is there any way to spin this in his favor? Nizu said there's no middle ground, so he can't just ask Shinso to stay impartial. He needs to get Shinso on his side, or he'll go to the police and the game will end. You said at the assembly that you're either on the side of the police or the Mafia. Should someone discover my identity, am I allowed to bribe them into not telling the police? The rules don't say you can't? Oh yeah, Midoriya answers truthfully, sighing. I wanted to. I still do. Shinso quirks an eyebrow. Oh, the rules don't say I can't tell future members that I want to recruit them, Izuku says, setting down his cup. If you want, you can be an unofficial member until I can actually recruit you. I've already used up my member for the day, but I want to have you in the inner circle. I was actually planning on recruiting you next. Shinso glances back at him, not turning his head away from the window. And if I go to the police? Izuku wraps his nails against the table. I've already helped you expand your quirk. Honestly, you play a key role in most of my plans. I think you could gain a lot of experience from this. Plus, this is still an exam. Isn't this a perfect time to prove you're worthy of being in the heroics course? That gets Shinsu's attention. I should end the game right now, Shinso whispers, but Izuku can tell he's uncertain. I'm going to be a hero, so I shouldn't play the villain. This is a perfect opportunity for you, Izuku points out. Your quirk is so well suited to this game, I feel it was made for you. There's so much I want to try, and well, I'm in the Mafia, and some other hero students will be, so we can always help train you. Shinso glances down at the cat he was petting, slowly resuming running his hands through its fur. Can I think about it? If I decide to go to the police, I'll inform you beforehand. Izuku's eyes crinkle, and he holds out a hand. Deal? Shinso eyes his hand, then the cat in his lap, and then he takes it, and the two shake hands. Okay, Kingpin. I'll let you know. Unbeknownst to one of them, Hatsum listens in on the whole conversation and begins upgrading her capture gun should they need to suspend Shinso from going to the police. There's not much point, as they can't kidnap him for a month, but it's the thought that counts. November 4th, day 4, 2 o'clock. Izuku can't sleep. It was supposed to be an easy day. They were going to lay low, Hatsum and him were going to play around with tech, Assembly would sit in the lab while researching, Izuku would write notes on his classmates, and Hatsum would make new gear. Nothing about today was supposed to be eventful, nothing was going to happen. They were going to have a fun day off before SHT hit the fan, and they were going to lure the police into a false sense of security while they were at it. Obviously, that's not what happened. Somewhere along the lines, it went downhill and fast. 1 minute he was laughing with Hatsum about how a silly gas mask design, the next minute he was desperately trying to control his breathing as his morals duked it out. Izuku should have let Shinso end the game. He should have let him take his identity to the police. He could have apologized, said he didn't want to play the villain, and left it at that. Everything could have returned to normal, his plans could fade into obscurity, and no one would hate him. Is it wrong to have a part of him be excited? Is it wrong to have a part of him feel sadistic glee when he thinks about his future plans? What if there's a part of him that's secretly a monster, secretly a villain, and he's been a bad person all along? He should have never come to Yui, should have never tried to be a hero, should have never taken one for all. He doesn't deserve it. A villain doesn't deserve such a heroic quirk. A couple minutes into his spiral, he notices he can't breathe. He places a hand over his heart, feeling the rapid beat. He's dealt with this before, but something feels wrong this time, because there's no one to turn to. There's no one who he can talk to because the Mafia is supposed to be a secret and everyone is going to hate him once this game is over and he'll be all alone again. Like now, he's alone now. It's the same as it was before, it's just like middle school, just like before Yui, and Izuku's tears on his face are doing a horrible job of grounding him. There's no one to turn to. He can't slip into Ida's room and get hugs, he can't play Mario Kart with Uraraka in the common room, he can't sit in with Todoroki as each of them do their own thing, he can't nerd out with Azui, he can't have Aoyama do his makeup. There's no one around, because they all hate him, as they should. He's a villain, he's in the Mafia. Hatsum, he can talk to Hatsum. He scrambles for his phone, nearly knocking his bedside table over in the process, and the light burns his eyes, but Izuku doesn't care. He sifts through his contacts for far too long, and for a second, he worries he doesn't have the girl's number at all, but then he realizes she's saved as Livewire, so he scrolls back to L. There he presses dial before his brain can catch up with him. The phone doesn't even ring once before Hatsum picks up. Hello. And in typical Izuku fashion, he breaks down in tears. Hey Midoriya. Hatsum's voice flutters through the screen, and it only makes him cry harder, because it's nice having someone there even if it's only digital. Midoriya, are you alright? Is there an attack? Did something happen? 3. He blubbers, turning the phone onto speaker before burying his face in his hands. I'm sorry. Is this about Shinso? Hatsum asks, hitting right on the mark. Izuku nods before he remembers she can't see him. Hey, it's not your fault. I'm surprised it took someone this long to figure it out, Hatsum assures, and Izuku shakes his head. No, it's not. It's about what he said. Hatsum's voice takes on a hint of anger. What did he say? The camera must not have caught it. And in deep breaths. Izuku complies and his throat burns. Is it wrong to like playing this game? What? Because Izuku fiddles with his pillow, pressing it against his front and imaging it's a hug. Because my plans are mean, and my friends are gonna hate. He cuts off, burying his face in his pillow as a fresh wave of tears springs on him. Do you want to come to the lab? Hatsum asks. Or should I come to you? Actually, it's probably quicker if I come to you. What room are you again? Second floor, right? Yeah, you don't have to. I'm on my way, Hatsum chirps, and there's the sound of shuffling. I'm gonna put my phone in my pocket, so if the call ends abruptly, that's why. Izuku doesn't respond, clutching his pillow tighter. He doesn't understand. He's a villain, his plans are evil, so why is she coming to comfort him? Shouldn't she be running away, like everyone else will? A new feeling grips his heart, fear. He doesn't want to lose his friends, his classmates. He doesn't want to lose Ida's protectiveness or Uraraka's puffy cheeks or Azui's wry comments or Aoyama's sparkles or Todoroki's relaxing silence. Oh, Todoroki is going to hate him so much, he's going to abandon him and turn against him, and he's going to lose the one friend he's worked so strong for to a stupid game. But it's not the game, is it? It's Izuku. Izuku is the one with the cruel ideas. Izuku is the one coming up with the plans. Izuku is the one who should be blamed. Not the game, not Hatsum, not Assembly, not Nizu. It's all Izuku's fault. And that's when Hatsum raps on his door. He looks up, surprised to see the call has ended, and Hatsum is on his balcony, already messing with his lock. She's working with a shocking amount of speed, and Izuku can see a slight amount of fear in her eyes. Oh God, she's afraid of him, isn't she? As she should be. He's a villain, he's mean and sadistic and psychotic, and Izuku is in tears again, clutching his pillow tight to his tea, and he can't breathe. Why can't he breathe? Midoriya, Hatsum whisper shouts, finally getting his door open. She slides the door and steps inside, almost slamming it shut. She carefully locks it, and then she's diving at him, and he feels her arms wrapped securely around him, and she shouldn't. She should be running away. Wasn't she scared of him? Isn't she supposed to be afraid of villains? It's okay, Hatsum exclaims, taking one of her hands and putting it under Izuku's head, cradling him close. I don't know what's wrong, I don't know what Shinso said, but it's okay, everything is fine. But why should Izuku ends the word babble with a strangled noise, and Hatsum pushes the pillow between them aside, cuddling Izuku closer. No one is going to hate you, Hatsum says, with a note of finality that makes Izuku want so desperately to believe her. No one is going to be mad at you after this, and if they are, you'll have me and the rest of the Mafia anyways. And I'm sure your friends will realize how much you mean to them. No one is going to hate you. But that's not how it works. Izuku exclaims, though it sounds like a question. Everyone always ends up hating me. They shouldn't, Hatsum says, loosening her hold to prop herself up next to Izuku. Why would they hate you? Because I don't. Izuku shakes his head, growing frustrated. That's how it's always worked. Everyone ends up hating the useless Deku in the end, so there was no point in indulging in comfort and friends and classmates when it would make the end result hurt more. No one is going to hate you, Hatsum whispers, and she gives him a small smile. And I'll punch Shinso for you if you'd like. It'd be a shame if one of his support items happened to malfunction. No, Izuku says, though he can't suppress a giggle. Don't sabotage Shinso, why not? Hatsum whines, and it's obviously played up, but a childish part of him still finds it funny. Because you just can't. Since when has that ever stopped me? Hatsum, fine, she relents, swatting his arm. Do you want to talk more about it, or do you want to put on one of this cheesy All Might films you love so much for some reason? Izuku blushes as soon as he realizes, yeah, his room really is an All Might shrine. You know I can't resist the All Might movies, that's why I suggested them, isn't it? Hatsum grins, and Izuku feels his heart swell with gratitude. She's probably gotten the gist of his problems anyways, and the last thing he wants to do right now is talk about them. For the first time since the game started, Izuku gets an acceptable amount of sleep. October 31st, day 06 o'clock. Aizawa is the last to arrive in the